No luck once again. How am I supposed to break free of this cycle? I've tried out so many things and I'm already running out of ideas. If only there was someone or something I could leech off of to get views. Huh? No. No, not that. Surely there's some other way to go about things. I can't. He's probably on the process of making it anyways, and I would have wasted my time if it did poorly. No, not like this. Do you realize how many there are? Surely this isn't. Surely. There has to be another way. Well, here we are, boys and girls. I've officially gotten desperate enough to make this. Alright, let's keep a few things in mind before we do this. I am ranking these graces from how much they matter in terms of gameplay, whilst also factoring in just how scenic each and every single one is. After all, graces tend to vary on how beautiful the area they surround is, and after counting over and over and over and over again, I have found that the definitively correct number of graces in this game, including its DLC, is 414, and I refuse to hear anyone saying otherwise. No, it's not 418 or 19 or whatever number you're thinking of, and looking up wikis won't help you out either since they miss a few things, and even so, you can never be fully sure. Well, until now anyways. Either way, if I miss anything, then please don't bitch about it in the comments, if anyone even watches this video, since YouTube couldn't possibly neglect me harder if it tried. Do not try to argue with the man that's ranked every glorified bonfire when there are hundreds. Just please bear with me on this one. Being irrelevant for well over 2 years does things to you. I swear you have to understand. Number 414. 414. Oh my fucking goodness. You know, it's only when you have a big giant number in front of you like this that you realize just how dauntingly massive a task like this is, and yet I can't go back on my word. Fun fact, there were multiple occasions where I just straight up forgot about certain graces and had to double, triple, quadruple, no, quintuple check just to make sure there weren't any missing ones. Oh well, I've got no other choice, so enough bickering and let's just do this shit. Number 414, Malekith the Black Blade's Grace. Do I even have to explain this one? You defeat this steroid-ridden dog with an oversized kitchen knife infused with literal death and end up warping to a place that immediately hits you with a grace the second you're on it. Which means the only way you could ever go to this grace in the first place is if you've traveled from the Great Bridge Grace all the way to Malekith's Arena again. And if you did all of that, congratulations, you've just wasted 2 minutes of your time you're never getting back. It's almost as if this grace forgot what it's even there for. Either that or it's somehow delusional enough to believe it's so good that every tarnished must come to the arena just to see it and give it a high five. By far the most worthless and pointless side of grace to date. Number 413, the Gateside Chamber Grace. Were you too foolish and afraid to tell Gustok's crusty ass to open the gates? Don't worry, FromSoft's got your back with a crank that opens up the gates and a grace for some reason. Okay, seriously, why the hell does this even exist? Was pushing that lever really tiresome enough to the point where every tarnish has to go, alright, I need a break. Any more hard work's gonna break my back. Did they just forget about the grace that's literally right here? Why are they making it seem like the lever's suddenly gonna jump at you or explode with fire magic or slap your ass? It's an inanimate object. It's not gonna start growing limbs and fight you. Number 412, the Cave of Knowledge Grace. I know this is the very first grace you encounter on your playthrough, which serves the great purpose of tutorializing you. But literally every enemy in this cave dies to a couple R1s, if that. And unless you're dying to fucking Soldier of Godric, I don't see it doing much for you, honestly. In fact, there's a stick of Medica right before you reach him anyway, so it's not even like you can even do that. I guess the game thought that he was a formidable enough opponent to earn his own stake. Let's also not forget about the fact that you can just skip the tutorial entirely and reach another grace 2 centimeters away from it. In short, it's very lucky to not be in dead last, considering that basically everyone uses this grace at least once while playing the game, making it worth something, I suppose. Number 411, Margit the Fell Omen's Grace. There's multiple reasons for why these graces in particular get so much trash talk. The unoriginal names, the 2 centimeter distance between it and other graces, and the overall uselessness of them. But this one is somehow worse than your average boss grace, as it's sandwiched between 2 other graces like some unnecessary topping in a literal sandwich. At least if you were gonna keep this one, give it some usefulness rather than replacing it immediately with another grace, which also feels unnecessary. We're one grace away from playing a game of Snake using them. Number 410, the Rani's Chamber Grace. You did not just create a grace that only appears once. I have no reason to come back here and see Rani again. What kind of diabolical level design is this? This could have been useful and allowed me to speak to Rani without riding atop a boring ass elevator ride every time, but instead, no, you just had to place it right there to mock me due to it being late to the party to be any kind of useful. You know what? Fuck you, I'm moving on. Number 409, the rear gale tunnel entrance grace. Whoever made this grace must have been suffering from a stroke that day or something. No way an actual human being created this checkpoint into existence. A grace that's incredibly close to one's far more useful and noticeable, with the potential of it being somewhat useful, only for Miyazaki to hit me with this message? Go fuck yourself. This is why Dark Souls 2 is the superior game and why they should have taken more mechanics from it. I don't even care if it technically serves as an okay respawn point to the magma worm boss due to this cave being like 2 seconds long. Number 408, the hidden path to the Halic tree grace. This grace is pure and utter trash. A full demonstration of why humans are so wasteful yet unwilling to do enough to correct their past mistakes and stop wasting things. In no way, shape or form is it useful whilst being universally confusing as to the point of its existence, which is nothing. It serves no purpose. Number 407, the Cocoon of the Empyrean Grace. It's the grace that's closest to the DLC entrance, and that's all what separates it from being coupled with the rest. Not because of how mesmerizing it looks or anything, no, just that. Number 406, the Nokran Eternal City Grace. Some might say this grace basically serves no purpose as there's another stick of America invalidating its existence, but I wouldn't fully agree with that statement. Who knows, maybe you could go somewhere else before continuing on your journey that you just started, or respawn in case you die to a bunch of 20-year-old night shift workers. Okay, this grace may not be as easily defendable as I once thought, but look at the bright side, at least we get to look at one of the most aesthetically satisfying sights in the game, because that's one positive, right? Right? Number 405, the Primeval Sorcerer Azure Grace. I genuinely have nothing to say in defense of this grace. It serves next to no purpose as it's not too far away from other sites whilst leading you to an area you've either already explored or didn't, and even so, it's not like you're gonna die to a couple wolves before reaching the next checkpoint anyways. Worst of all, it could have actually served the slightest niche of being good for respawning against Maggie, but that's not happening anytime soon due to a certain statue's existence. Number 404, the Cathedral of the Forsaken Grace. Despite how unholy the area it accompanies looks, this grace is incredibly blessed to not currently be in the pile of other sites you unlock after defeating its respective boss, and we all know why. We can all hate on this annoying ass parkour segment that's killed us more than any boss with its bullshit laws of gravity, but at least the developers won't complete sadists wishing nothing but absolute pain and suffering to anyone here, just as the name of the grace would suggest. Without its existence, we would have had to use this one instead, which is a whopping 5 millimeters further, so I'm just glad we live in a world with some semblance of humanity. Number 403, the Aegil Lake North Grace. Now instead of being 2 centimeters away from another grace that's way better, it's now like 5 centimeters away instead. Seriously, what's with it in these goddamn filler graces? Am I a level 1 wretch picking fights with anyone I see only to get my ass kicked 90% of the time and does require a grace every 5 centimeters of distance I cover so that I may lose faster to another Kaiden Sellsword or Knight's Cavalry? Number 402 is the Tree Worship Passage Grace. Very pointless, but also quite missable during your first time down in the piss-drained church because of this infinitely better one right here. But even if you do stumble upon this ugly-ass grace, you might want to explore whatever it's got in store after you find the galore and this church washed up ashore, meaning it could technically serve as a great way of you returning without needing to go all the way back, so it's alright, I guess. Wow, what a weak fucking argument. Is that really the best I came up with in defense of this grace back when I wrote this entry? This site's just essentially banking on you using it and not going down the tunnel until later so that you may warp to it once as its only possible function if the stars align. Guess I was just so busy writing down the fire lyrics that I forgot how dog shit it truly was. You live and you learn, I guess. Number 401, the High Road Cross Grace. You know the drill by now. A magnificent grace gleaming with potential only for it to be sabotaged by another's existence 2 centimeters away. Though at least this one doesn't get completely disregarded by my method of ranking these, since you could occasionally warp back to it in case you wanted to revel in its beauty or make sure you fully do Leda's quest properly, which is more convoluted than an underground train railway system in New York. Number 400, the Eastern Liurnia Lake Shore Grace. There was an intern at FromSoft HQ that looked at this specific portion of Liurnia and decided, you know what? If the player suddenly decided to start exploring everything here, they're gonna need a grace in case they feel like leaving and warping back, even though the other sites aren't too far away whilst looking prettier than it. Either that or it's the other way around for those that have only explored this side of Liurnia, with both possibilities showing just how utterly worthless this checkpoint is. We already have plenty of graces that introduce you to the lake. There's no need for any more if they're not gonna offer anything else, especially if they require me to randomly decide now would be a good time to start exploring the lake I most likely already went through, considering that it's a good 80% of this region with plenty of other nearby sites both in and out of its borders. Number 399 to 374, these graces. The vast majority of these are after killing a whole bunch of bosses and are ranked this low for already established reasons whilst being more or less the same. We just do not need this many graces clogging up the lands between or lands of shadow for that matter, as they serve basically no purpose. They're tossing so many worthless graces the same way schools toss like 50 different subjects at you with none of them ever being useful, as you'll never be in a scenario where you'd need to apply them. Number 373 is the Forsaken Graveyard Grace. I should probably just pair this up with all the other boss graces, but given there's a 1% chance for a real human being with the cognitive ability to use their brain somewhat misses the Woodland Trail Grace and just starts wandering around until they find another checkpoint and that it looks visually pleasing, I'm willing to nudge it just barely enough to not be with the rest of them. I know, I'm a real gentleman with a big heart. What will the world do without my generous kindness? Number 372, 71, 70, 69, 68, and 67, the Divine Tower Graces. I think I speak for everyone when I say that these are awful. I get the thought of wanting the player to equip the Great Runes immediately after getting them, but they won't forget, okay? I don't care how much short-form content has lowered your attention span by, you are not forgetting about the Great Runes you came all the way here for. They should have just moved these close to the entrance of the towers as opposed to slapping them on top so that they'd serve the purpose of letting the player easily return once they've defeated that tower's respective main boss, except oh wait, most of them already do have those, so that just makes these even more puzzling as to why the fuck they exist. Except for the Caelid Divine Tower, that one rules. Number 366, the Astray from Caelid Highway North Grace. It's comical how if you just run in a straight line, you'd find yourself locking eyes with another Grace just 4mm away. I don't even have anything funny or clever to say about this. It's just there, sandwiched between 3 other goddamn Graces that are all much better than it, with the only thing it provides being dick and all. Looks quite nice though. Number 365, the Folly on the Lake Grace. It's pretty ugly and pretty worthless, since there's only a couple crabs standing between you and a superior Grace located in the village of the Albanorix, and if you're struggling with crabs, then you don't exist and aren't a real person. Not to mention that if you were heading here, you've probably already seen the massive fucking maw on the side of this mountain, so it's not like you're gonna get lost or anything. Number 364, Godric the Grafted's Grace. If you care enough and did Nepheli lose entire questline whilst valuing the 10-second time save that comes with using this grace specifically, then sure, be my guest and use it. But believe me when I say that the looks are the only thing saving this one, as not that many people do Nepheli's whole quest even if she does give you a snazzy reward. Number 363 is the Consecrated Snowfield Grace. You know what's worse than a bad grace? A bad grace that drags others down with it, like this one. It had the distance, it had the warp and respawning viability, it had the potential especially in a location that's foggy as this, but despite it all, the hidden path to the Halic tree decided to actively piss on its usability and drink its tears to quench its never-ending thirst by existing a good 7mm away from it. And before anyone asks why I specifically rank most graces next to each other low, it's because I have no better alternative. Because what am I supposed to do? Rank them both high even though one is used far more than the other? Or rank one of them high and the other low despite both being able to serve pretty much the exact same purpose? Therefore, in order to avoid any confusion or bias or headaches and make things easier for everyone, I intentionally rank both graces with a social distancing problem low on the list. Just thought that you'd like to know the process. Number 362 is the Tomb's Word Grace. Since this is Limgrave, where they're still trying to introduce you to how the game functions just in case you get your ass stomped on by the walking Big Ben clock right beside you, I guess you could make a small argument for this one. But such an argument can only go so far when there's literally a church grace that serves the exact same purpose while standing out instead of being so ashamed of itself that it's literally hiding in the grass. Seriously though, the only reason I remember this grace is because I somehow stumbled upon it during my first playthrough, and that's it. Number 361, the Fort Gale North Grace. I actually had a few nice things prepared to say to this grace, but that was before I discovered this motherfucking stake of America next to Fort Gale, effectively rendering it almost nothing more but an occasional site you warp to and enjoy the view of. Seriously, what's with these goddamn stakes of America? They could have been placed somewhere, anywhere actually useful, and yet a lot of them are just there to ruin an established dominance over some yellow checkpoints just by existing. Number 360 is the root-facing cliffs grace. As cool as it is to discover a whole new way of entering deep root depths, that's sadly all it's got going for it, since despite allowing you to respawn slightly faster if you were to fuck up a parkour jump somewhere, which you won't, the other grace is literally a few steps away from it. In fact, it's close enough for it to feel mocked, thus crying to itself sometimes. Number 359, the Dragon Temple Transept Grace. It's a grace you have to go out of your way of to find, and given that its use is ridiculously limited, we're not off to a good start here. However, being able to respawn for the Godskin Duo boss slightly faster without the potential of getting tickled by a Banished Knight's extra pointy greatsword he just couldn't resist poking you with is a nice benefit, since there's plenty of good items on the path to it anyway, thus giving you some reason to reach it. And if it's not enough to be nice, it's at least better than nothing, which is surprisingly more than what a lot of these sites could say, though they definitely could say they're more visible than this one, because not even half the player base knows of this grace's existence, I'm pretty sure, earning it the title of the worst boss respawning grace in Elden Ring. Number 358, the Aeonia Swamp Shore Grace. Wait a second, that can't be right. It looks decent whilst being close to a nomadic merchant and serving as a nice respawn point if you died in the swamp of Aeonia. Oh, that's right. It's sure your younger brother has a toxic relationship with is taking it down with him. Well, that's sad. Moving on. Number 357, the Ravine Grace. This one could just disappear from the game and no one would even notice. It's just a straight and narrow path leading to a better grace that you'd have reached anyways. It's like a person lying down on the floor to function as some sort of carpet for a more successful one. I don't care if you could technically reach the Bellum Highway through it. There's a grace in that highway where you're heading. Get this shit off my face. Number 356, the Sorcerer's Isle Grace. Blah blah blah, it's surrounded by a whole bunch of other graces that bully it so hard just by their existence that it renders it nigh obsolete. I can tell there's something on that island, man. I mean, just look at how massive it is. You can see that bitch from miles away, but that doesn't certainly mean it's of enough importance to be worthy of a grace, as the only thing there is Testicles Rise, which does contain a decent item inside, but see if I care, because I sure as hell don't. Number 355, the Murkwater Coast Grace. I can't excuse this one for being in Limgrave and looking a little pretty when it's this hard to notice. And I would know, given that I've only stumbled upon it during my first playthrough like I did for a lot of graces now that I think about it. I'm sorry, what was the thought process behind the making of this grace in particular? There's plenty in the game that are a little too far away from each other, and this one's sticking out just to tell me it showed up to work, and that's it. Number 354, the Artist's Shack Grace. Once again, it's too close to another grace to be of any significance, but the place surrounding it looks quite nice, so I can excuse it a little, which is why I'm willing to nudge it just slightly higher on the list compared to everything else before it. Number 353, the Revenger's Shack Grace. This one just straight up confuses me. Why is there an unnecessary grace due to the existence of these three when Gowry's Shack lacks any that are close by, even though you have to visit him like 4 times during his very important quest in total? It gets even more confusing when you realize there's a grace for almost each and every single shack, meaning they've probably slapped this one on just to stay on theme, only to forget about doing that in a much more important shack that doesn't have a grieving father desperately trying to behead me because he needs to be mad at someone for the death of his daughter. Also, the place just looks kinda meh. Number 352, the Forge of the Giants Grace. It's necessary to rest at once, which is precisely how many times you'll rest at it, because afterwards you'll be in Farum Azula one way or the other, meaning it's now worthless. Case closed. Number 351, the Knight's Sacred Ground Grace. Unless you were bad enough at the game to die on your way getting the key item you're not destined for and leaving, like me, there's no reason for this grace to exist. My best guess as to why the devs didn't opt for a stick of Marika is that they assumed you'd either get impatient or lose interest after getting the Mimic Tier Spirit Ash, or just wanted you to rest in case you wanted to pause for a minute to admire the beauty of the sacred ground. Either way, there's no hope for it ever being very useful gameplay-wise. Number 350, the Fisher Grace. Haven't triggered the event yet somehow? Well, sucks to suck, buddy. Back to the Cerulean Coast you go. These are words that basically sum up this Grace's entire life story. Completely worthless if you triggered the destruction of Miquella's Ruin, or whatever is left of it that is, but quite nice to have in case you didn't and don't feel like traveling for another 50 centuries just to return here. It also looks alright visually, but outside of that very small niche, it serves almost no other purpose, given that the stone coffin Fisher sites wrathfully dragging it down metaphorically, resulting in its utility being non-existent after the Divine Seal is broken. Number 349, the Stormvale Main Gate Grace. If you went literally anywhere other than the main path, it wouldn't take you long at all to reach the next grace, which means it's only useful when taking that route specifically. Which is what I would have said had this grace not existed. No matter what you choose, this grace will always remain lackluster, unless you keep dying a whole lot because you just can't help yourself from leveling up till you can wield that sick new weapon you simply can't wait to try out. Meanwhile, your health bar remains ever so malnourished. It's kinda cool seeing just how big the castle really is when you look up from here, but other than that and the Margate Grace constantly reminding it of how little it truly matters, it's a pretty whatever checkpoint. Number 348, the Windmill Heights Grace. Just another boss grace with the only... You know what? No, you already know what I'm about to say. I'm done being a broken record. Millicent's quest, which gives you a really good talisman by the end, hard carries this grace, since if you've forgotten about her and still want to do it, I guess you can warp there slightly faster and with less hiccups than the grace next door, but I'm still mad it's not down there with the 400s, because despite you being in the heights of a giant hill with a lot of big windmills, you can't even have a nice view with all of this random ass fog ruining your day. Number 347, the Dragon Barrow Fork Grace. Maybe if you didn't continue down this path and go to the cave with a grace that's very close by, you might be able to make an argument for this grace. But this is what you'd remember that you're arguing about sites of grace in Elden Ring. Sites of grace in Elden Ring. There's nothing more to say. It's just too close to other graces without serving a very distinct purpose or looking that visually appealing. Number 346, the Great Waterfall Crest Grace. Now this is a respectable grace, giving you the option to respawn after dying to gravity or insects or the 20th or 30 avatar you've locked eyes with this morning, whilst letting you marvel at the beauty of it, which is more than enough for a checkpoint to be ranked high on the list, even if the corpse wax lake could potentially remind you of a certain word 12-year-olds can't stop laughing at. Point being, I love this grace, which is why it pains me to my core seeing it ranked this low to this one dragging it down with it. Why did they have to be so close to each other? Number 345, the Lower Capital Church Grace. I was not expecting this checkpoint to be this god-awful, but if you think about it for more than 2 seconds, it more than makes sense. It's very close to a far better grace whilst not leading you anywhere special and looking ugly while doing it. The world would be a better place without its existence, and I refuse to give it any more screen time. Number 344, the Church Ruins Grace. Looks quite nice aesthetically, especially when dark gloomy sites like these are very few and far between in the game, but other than that small positive, there's nothing to be said for this checkpoint. It doesn't lead anywhere special despite being really far away from any other grace, meaning you most likely won't ever warp back to it, and unless you desperately want to rest because some rats have been beating your ass somehow, this grace will always remain worthless gameplay wise. Number 343, the Windmill Village Grace. It's kinda useful, you know, if you squint really hard until your eyes become bloodshot. I'm sorry, but allowing me to warp back in case I don't feel like going through a 5-minute adventure and fighting a lowly godskin apostle with a stake of Medica next to it, once again shitting on the hopes of this grace ever being good, which unlocks an even shittier grace, isn't gonna cut it. Like, it just won't. Number 342, the Summon Water Village Outskirts Grace. No matter how you reach the Summon Water Village, this grace is pointless. You're most likely gonna land on the Saints Bridge Grace, which is a jump, hop, and skip away from it. And even if you don't and you say, reached it via traveling atop a couple Spirit Springs after reaching the 3rd Church of Medica Grace, the only thing it provides is an easy way to respawn after dying to the Tibia Mariner. And if you're struggling with the Tibia Mariner fight, then you're gonna need a lot more than just a simple grace. Number 341, the Aegil Lake South Grace. It's a checkpoint in Limgrave that you'd most likely run into at least once. Okay, I've got nothing for this one. It's just sort of there leading you to a bridge with a far better grace on the other end, and that's about it. Like, I understand that this is Limgrave we're talking about, but even so, they could have done a lot more with this grace than just letting it remain as a means of getting a scenic view for a fight between a bunch of primitive cavemen and what's supposed to be a respectable army of well-decorated soldiers serving a demigod. Guess who won that fight, by the way? Number 340 is the Scenic Isle Grace. Is Patches there sometimes? Yes. Have you already bought every good item he sold? Most likely. Is this a grace so laughably pointless it feels as though it's trying purely to look aesthetically pleasing rather than useful? Also, yes. Should you ignore it and visit the Boil Prawn Shack that's so close it's literally in your sights? Absolutely. Number 339, the Shaded Castle Ramparts Grace. Why do you exist? Just why? I don't need a whole ass checkpoint for an obscure part of an often skipped dungeon where the only thing I could use it for is warping whilst trying to get the Stone Sword key for the 414th time. It doesn't even look pretty most of the time, with its only other function being a nice way of respawning in case you get bullied by a perfumer because your character's allergic to good hygiene for some reason. Number 338, the Liurnia Highway South Grace. Let's say you got impatient and skipped Stormvale entirely, opting to instead go to Liurnia, only for your impatience to drive you off the cliff and into this grace. Would it still be useful? Hell no, there's another grace just a little further down the road. Even if you went into the lake part of Liurnia, you'd have to be a blind swordsman in order to miss the less attractive Leskia Ruins Grace, which proves just how dumb the existence of this checkpoint is. Just go get the tree spear and move on with your life, ignoring it ever being there. I also know that no one's bad enough at the game to lose to these marionette soldiers while on their way to a better grace unless they have the vigor of an 88-year-old grandma on life support. So don't even try to defend it by saying how hard or unavoidable those enemies are. Number 337, the Abductor version, Grace. I placed this one slightly higher on the list, purely due to it being the best budding cave moss farming spot if you somehow ran out of budding cave moss and need more budding cave moss. Is it obvious that this is the only good thing I can say about this Grace? Its ass would have been in the dumpster alongside all the other boss Graces, but it's lucky I'm turning the other cheek and sparing it the embarrassment, since I can't ignore this one item's importance for crafting some of the better consumables in the game. Also, this fucking tutorial's stupid, and it's not because of the top tier quality music, but rather the inferior path they took to get the moss. Number 336, the Capital Rampart Grace. This Grace just sucks. It's lame and only looks pretty. Recovering from the Draconic Tree Sentinel slab of a dragon's toenail is what it offers, and that's it. Want an actually good Grace? Just walk a little further past it and never look back. Hell, if you were like me and entered Leyndell via Fia's quest of all things on your very first playthrough, you can just blissfully ignore its beautiful existence and move on with your life. Number 335, the West Rampart Grace. It exists for one sole reason and one reason only. And that's catering to those who never realized they could use torrents and easily avoid the Rain of Fire, defeating the whole purpose of this unique Fire Knight casting that spell for some reason. I guess FromSoft back then realized just how terrible Rain of Fire was before the buff that even they couldn't save the very experienced, loyal Knight of Mesmer from being slapped around and made fun of for daring to cast it, though it's not like she poses enough of a threat to warrant this Grace's existence, considering you're at a point in the DLC where you've killed her very master. Unbelievable. No matter how you look at it, there's no saving this Grace, much like how there's no saving this pathetic loser's name or fashion choice. Go cast a Mesmer piss spell somewhere else, you dingus. Number 334, the artist wait, what? It turns out there's two Graces that share the same name, so just to avoid any confusion, this is the Liurnia version separate from the Limgrave one, if the footage didn't already make that obvious. It looks more handsome than its twin brother, whilst being much farther away from any other Grace, but the reason why it's ranked this high is solely due to the decent items the painting gives you instead of some piss-stained cockroach called a hat, meaning you have more reason to visit both it and its natural stone bridge leading you to the other mountain right next to it if you, for some reason, decided to not descend downwards where Jarberg is and the Carian Study Hall is and the Deep Sea Opera. Well, okay, this Grace may be much better than its twin, but man, was it cursed to have you ignore some of the most important locations Liurnia has to offer. It's like the geography itself told it to go fuck itself. Number 333 is the bridge leading to the village Grace. A name like that is so specific that it practically speaks for itself. There is no need to explain why this one's ranked this high. It was literally born ready to receive this spot on the list. What, still confused as to why it's ranked in trash tier? Well, you could always use a little reading in your life, so there you go. Number 332, the Anira Limb Outer Wall Grace. You might use this in case defeating the Divine Bird Warrior ends up taking you a few deaths, or just don't feel like walking a few millimeters further to a much better site you perhaps didn't know existed before warping somewhere else and coming back later. Wait a minute, why is this Grace ranked so high again? Right. Number 331, Star Scourge Radahn's Grace. The only reason for why this is ranked way higher than your average boss Grace is simply because of this random ass catacombs dungeon shoved all the way into the edge of fucking nowhere. And in typical FromSoft fashion, it happens to be one of the best catacombs dungeons in the entire game. Meaning unless you've explored the entirety of this desert to make sure you didn't miss anything, you'd have to warp using this Grace in order to get here. Also, I swear if you've defeated Radahn, the game would force you to at least interact with it in some way, but that doesn't seem to happen anymore. Please someone in the comments back me up on this one, because I'm too lazy to do any more research than I already have. Number 330, the Bridge of Iniquity Grace. We'll talk about a letdown. I know this site is far enough away from most Graces to be valuable, especially when looking at the juicy view it offers and the potential of someone warping back to it in case they wanted to go somewhere other than Mount Gelmir, but the one sitting maliciously above it is throwing a metaphorical anvil so heavy it makes the checkpoint feel insignificant. It could have been great, one of the best even, but due to how close it is to this motherfucker, it's rendered almost completely useless unless you were so dog water at the game that killing Anastasia again without dying at least 50 times was a tall task. In which case, respawning at the higher up Grace is still better due to you getting to her slightly faster unless this was your very first playthrough and didn't know it existed. Yeah, it's pretty hopeless. Number 329, the Crystalline Woods Grace. This would have been ranked a little lower had the Grace next to it been accessible without the need for 2 Stone Sword keys. And yes, I know Stone Sword keys are so abundant they practically grow on trees, but since this is Liurnia, you probably don't have that many lying around. Meaning it does become something worth mentioning, but at the end of the day, if you go here, either you'll miss it completely or you won't miss it once you're done using it anyways, because it sorta doesn't lead anywhere. Except if you wanted to go fight Smarag, I guess, though most likely you've got that covered by this Grace anyway. Number 328, the Fisher Waypoint Grace. I was gonna rank this one high on the list before I realized just how deceptively bad it is. First of all, it doesn't look that pretty. Second of all, it's not too far away from other sites in comparison to the majority of the Stone Coffin Fisher family. And third of all, the strongest enemy blocking your path from a much better one is just another Leonine Misbegotten who either dies or kills himself faster than he could pull out his new move, which no one gives a shit for since it's literally the exact same as the Misbegotten Crusader's established order skill, except slightly different. Let this be a lesson, folks. Never judge a grace too early before doing a background check first if you care about ranking graces in a 3-year-old game. Okay, I'm gonna stop that line of thought there before I get any more depressed. Holy shit. Number 327 and 326, the Minor Earthly Church and the Besides the Crater-Pocked Glade Grace. I couldn't decide which was better since they both have an even amount of benefits and detriments, so I'll just pair them up together. As incredible looking as the church is, that's really all there is to say about it, apart from the optional dialogue you unlock with Melina if you care. It doesn't really lead you anywhere, just like the other grace with the longest name ever for one. Though technically speaking, if you're struggling with the mob of aggressively T-posing alien worshippers alongside an indecent old man with an oversized toothpick, being able to respawn is quite nice, as it's a bit more useful than just having your dopamine receptors get fired off because of some nice views, so there's that, I guess.
That hurt.
Number 325, the Below the Well Grace. There are certain graces out there with a pretty obvious reason as to why they exist, with this one simply being present in case you don't have enough stone sword keys to unlock this elevator ride but wish to not go all the way back once you do. That's pretty much all it offers apart from the beautiful view. Number 324, the Finger Ruins of Rhea Grace. I think the footage alone explains the entirety of why this grace is ranked here on the list, so I'm just gonna rant about how much of a missed opportunity the Finger Ruins are. You have these incredibly huge structures with a lot of lore significance, and you dedicate their entire existence to just being a location you have to explore for Count Ymir's questline, and that's it? At least create a unique boss or something so that I don't feel like I'm being pummeled by these finger leechmonger face pricks for nothing. What a waste. Number 323, Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy's Grace. If you come back here after talking to Tennis, she could be seen boring the shit out of an immortal snake that wants to eat the world. Beating her up results in a fight against her simp, with his favorite hobby being fire eating, and after you send his ass back to hell, you get an okay spell and some other junk. That's pretty much the full extent of what this grace does, apart from it looking nice, and you know what? It's a heck of a lot more useful than what basically any other boss grace offers. If only more of them were like this. Oh, and you could also grab this if you've forgotten about it, but who cares? Number 323, Estelle, Natural Born of the Void's Grace. Unlike nearly every boss grace, this one serves an actual purpose, that being the gate right next to this site waiting for you to leave and come back until you have the Dark Moon Ring to access the Moonlight Altar, which is necessary for the final step of Ronnie's quest, and we've already talked about how often it's done by most people, so no need to repeat myself. Ultimately giving the grace some actual use, especially because of its distance, so it should count itself lucky that it was spared the humiliation of being thrown into the dumpster with the rest of them. Apart from that, it looks neat, I guess, but that's all I should, and I'm willing to say in defense of its existence. I've got other sites to rank, now scram! Number 321, the Divine Bridge Grace. No one's ever forgetting that magical moment where, as usual, you explore a seemingly inconspicuous tower only to be rewarded with a glimpse of what the capital you'll eventually reach is like. This is one hell of a nice view. The kind of sights you'd look at resulting in you pondering and thinking about everything in life for about an hour. This is by far the Grace's biggest specialty, since it's not very special in terms of functionality, as you're just gonna return to it once Malenia is defeated to earn the Great Rune of a mighty shard bearer you'll never use, and perhaps stumble upon it later on and remember, oh yeah, I've been here before. Or if you die to the Guardian Golem, but it's a Guardian Golem, come on. Number 320, the Laskyar Ruins Grace. Being able to respawn immediately after getting your ass handed to you by a syphilis-infested centipede's nice and all, but this is the same grace that's 3 centimeters away from a different one, whilst containing a portal that takes you directly into a much better grace anyway. And let's not forget the numerous ways you can encounter a Royal Revenant and its many small idiot children ringing their bells so much you'd think you were in an office building. This makes it very unnecessary and just sorta there without serving much of a purpose. Number 319, the Ailing Village Outskirts Grace. Fun fact, I used to go here all the time to farm rats for rune arcs with the most amount of item discovery buffs I could get my grubby little hands on because I just couldn't stop dying and losing my Godric rune buff. And you know what? Even then I hated this grace. By the time you reach it, you would have already ransacked the whole village and its church, and it's not like these doomers that can only see eternal damnation and suffering are gonna pose a threat to you or have anything you might want. And the only key points of interest to be seen can be reached just as easily from this grace instead, which results in it just sorta existing, which is a problem that happens too often to one too many graces. Number 318, the Grand Lift of Dectus grace. I've had a hard time trying to find where this specific grace fits in, because it's obviously there so that you come back to its location with the two Dectus halves, which is nice and straight to the point. But that's about it, and the problem with its only function is that its neighboring grace beside it keeps beckoning me to just enter Altus through it due to the ruin-strewn precipice being fun and having good items. Not to mention that the moment you go up the elevator, there's a grace literally 2 steps away, so I'm just gonna stop worrying and make things easy for myself by placing it here and seeing how many people care or not. And the answer to that is obviously no one, because realistically nobody's even making it to the half point of this monstrosity. People are just gonna click on this video, leave a comment and disappear, so why should I fucking bother? Number 317, the Garden of Deep Purple grace. I would have paired it up with almost every other boss grace, but god damn it, these stunningly beautiful flowers that lull you to sleep are just too perfect to receive a low ranking on the list. Nah, I'm just pulling your leg, which, according to Rusty, is legally assault, but find someone sensitive enough to go to a police station and complain about something like that, only to be laughed at like the clown they are, since no one gives a shit. Its one and only purpose is to be warped to or rested at plenty of times until the Tiolier questline has been completed, though I guess you could also respawn using it in case defeating the poisonous #1 Saint Trina simp who's weak as a kitten and sick as 2 planks proves to be too much of a challenge to handle. Still getting a pretty low ranking on the list given how close it is to the grace before it though. Number 316, the Grand Lift of Rolled grace. It's basically like the Grand Lift of Dectus grace, except infinitely better since you're likely to warp back here a couple times to access the Halictory catacombs or respawn slightly closer to the Blackblade Kindred boss. Oh, okay, it's only now that I realize how lame this grace is. I don't care how hard he is, the developers had no right being this scared of someone having to go all the way back to fight him each time due to them not noticing the site's existence a couple centimeters away when there's plenty of times where they've left us walking miles before reaching a certain destination only to die over and over. Have faith that people will just ignore a tough enemy until they find a checkpoint close to them. We were literally taught exactly that at the beginning of the game. Come on. Number 315, the Hinterland grace. I feel like I'm being stabbed repeatedly every second I write this entry. Why did they make the introductory grace 10 centimeters away from 2 other ones the most visually stunning masterpiece ever crafted by FromSoft? This shit is beautiful, and yet I physically can't rank it any higher due to its uselessness and lack of an easy way to access a specific point of interest that no other grace could do as well. Not even these 3 sentinels that are so lost they now serve an entirely different tree could give it any use because of this much better one right here. It's okay, Hinterland grace. You'll always have a special place in our hearts, unlike this cruel, unforgiving tier list. Number 314, the Recluse's River Upstream grace. I was gonna rank this one incredibly high on the list due to it leading you to one of the nameless mausoleums, decent items, the Village of Flies, and the Darklight Catacombs, all while looking stylish. But that's because I briefly forgot about the downstream grace, which literally nullifies all of the positives of this one due to it being considerably closer to said things. And to add insult to injury, this is a rare case where a grace that's a little closer to another one is still vastly superior on the list, because you'll be dying or warping back to this checkpoint enough times for its existence to actually matter, because they have just enough distance between each other for it to be a massive inconvenience without it, meaning it'll forever sit in an abandoned junkyard depressingly, with its only potential function being a method of respawning in case you die to the furnace golem or on your way to its traitorous scam artist brother who got away with it. Number 313, the Converted Tower grace. Every time I see this grace, I get mad. Like, exceptionally angry and frustrated. Who's the genius that decided to plant a beautiful grace far away from any other with seemingly useful purposes, only for said purposes to be flipped off by a stick of America and a few horse parkour jumps? It could have been a genuinely amazing checkpoint to respawn at or warp to, but no, it just had to get fucked left, right, and center. Whoever the genius that planted this grace was, they deserve to be hit with a giant crusher in real life. Number 312, the Northern Liurnia Lake Shore grace. If you weren't going to the King's Realm ruins as you should, and instead made your way to the ravine, it's quite useful, but most of the time you'd just find this one instead, which is like a few feet away from it if you ignore the Royal Reverence boss, I guess. Though its looks are definitely saving it from me ranking it lower, and there you have it, Americans. I mentioned your shitty metric system. Please clap for me. Number 311, the Outer Wall Battleground grace. Aside from looking nice and giving you the choice to go 2 separate paths, this grace really really doesn't have much going for it. Not only is there a Sake of Monica a few inches away if you decide to go here, but there's a much better grace literally standing taller than it a bit further away, clearly asserting its superiority, which means the only realistic way you'd get something out of this checkpoint is if you went to the other direction, but even so, I think you can tell by now that it doesn't deserve to be ranked any higher. It physically pains me to put this grace what it is on the list. I mean, just look at how majestic that view is. Even from a gameplay perspective, it allows the player to see so many key points of interest, thus telling them exactly where they should go. Sadly, the unfortunate truth of the matter is that there isn't anything else going for it. It's just so close to a lot of other graces, it might as well not even exist, which really saddens me. But this is what I must do to keep the list as unbiased as possible, so I should just accept it. Number 309, the Tempest Facing Balcony Grace. Pretty good to rest at in case you've got your entire jaw filled with knuckle sandwiches hand-delivered to you by sentient dogs with ancient dragon lightning, but other than that small niche and scenic view, this grace falls too short to be significant. It's simply too close to these two that matter far more and have a lot more to offer in comparison. Is it potentially useful for saving time if you die to gravity or something while on your way to the next grace? Yes. Does that matter enough for it to be ranked high even though you're most likely never gonna warp back to wherever? Definitely not. Number 308, the Castle Watering Hole Grace. Serves a bigger purpose than you might think. After all, you could just move straight ahead to the Recluse's River Grace and leave it at that, or you'd most likely return to it due to you either not doing this parkour jump I discovered by accident during my first playthrough, or because you rightfully thought there was no way to resurrect this giant lazy furnace, giving it a bit more use than just existing to be warped into anyways in case you decided to explore this location later, which is a real possibility. And since the items contained in the ruined temple are great and I'm in a good mood today, I'll rank it a little higher than boring tier. Number 307, the Frenzied Flame Prescription Grace. It's one of the most memorable graces in almost anyone's playthrough, though I don't mean that in a good way, as the mere memory of how to get here is enough to inflict madness upon someone in real life. But either way, it serves as a great warping point in case you ran into it without doing Hiera's quest, or aren't sure which ending you want to go for, or haven't entered Deep-Root Depths yet for some reason and wish to go back and check for hidden walls. But I doubt that being a realistic scenario, so let's just focus on the other two reasons. By the way, I was gonna rank it lower given that you can just use this grace to instantly reach the bottom once you do the first time, but I figured nobody knew that, and if almost nobody knows how truly useful another grace is, I guess that just gives its next door neighbor more value naturally. Number 306, the Smoldering Wall Grace. Meh. Number 305, the Divine Tower of West Altus Gate Grace. This and like 6 other graces are tied for the longest grace name in the whole game, which is like 32 characters. Just felt that you should know because there isn't a whole lot to say about this checkpoint in particular. Sure, it looks pretty, sure you'll most likely stumble upon it before defeating Rykard, thus serving an innate purpose, but come on now, this is Rykard's great rune we're talking about here. It's nothing to go crazy for, especially when you know your ass is still gonna be using either of these 3. Number 304, the Road of Iniquity Side Path Grace. This one's quite tough to rank. On one hand, it's really useful and quite far away from any other grace while serving as a pretty good midpoint, meaning you could just pick a direction and find something of interest regardless of where you went. But on the other hand, you'll most likely go to the forest-spanning Great Bridge Grace, rendering it completely useless given that there's a portal leading you directly to it. So despite it being quite useful if you didn't go here, you'll most likely use this checkpoint before stumbling upon it, unfortunately killing any potential it had and resulting in it being placed here on the list. Number 303, the Royal Moon Gazing Grounds Grace. I guess there's a slight argument to be had for this one. Given that it's a great resting place after fighting Loretta while still being decently far away from any other grace and giving you the choice to go 2 separate paths right outside Karya Manor, I could see it being a grace to occasionally warp to. That coupled with it looking pretty leaves me no choice but to rank it a lot higher than the rest of the boss graces. By the way, in case anyone's confused, whenever I say a grace looks pretty, I actually mean the area around it because, you know, every grace looks the same. Number 302 is the Smoldering Church Grace. Upon sending Anastasia's crusty ass back to the Shadow Realm where she belongs as a poor imitation of Maneater Mildred, you can kiss this grace goodbye and never see it again, but not after taking a few crafting recipes, of course. After all, you can't help but try to make some delicious silver peat pickled in homemade poison juice. Number 301, the Fingerstone Hill Grace. In case you felt like coming back to the finger ruins of Deo to fully explore them, in spite of there being pretty much nothing of interest besides the Fingerstone Bell and the giant finger creeper which rewards you with a small version's ashes upon its defeat, this grace has got you covered and looks pretty well doing it. Oh, who am I kidding? This site's dog water and everybody knows it. I genuinely would have preferred a Steak of America or nothing at all over this. I mean, there's already one for the Falling Star Beast, so might as well have it cover the rest of the hill, right? But there's still one thing I can't deny, and it's this checkpoint's viability for respawning, because if I get knocked out of my horse one more time by another one of these albino leechmonger fuckheads, I'm gonna be the reason their entire species goes extinct. Number 300, the Cerulean Coast Cross, Grace. I abandon here all my creativity and say the site's purely for sightseeing, pun intended. Like seriously, it's there to look pretty, give you some lore, and maybe help you lose less time respawning and warping in case you need to do that, and that's about it. I mean, it's notably far away from any other Grace, but there's nothing else you can say about it, so let's just hurry this shit up and move on. Number 299, the Fractured America, Grace. I wrote a whole paragraph about why this was the worst Grace, and here it is, kicking its feet up here. So what changed? Well, I remembered that despite you being at the end of the game without much of a point in you leveling up or interacting with it at all, this Grace remains as your only method of warping back to the stone platform to pick any ending you're going for, plus most likely you'd have to warp out anyways to use the remembrance you just got to enter the DLC, for example. Which means that this Grace is actually quite useful in one simple way. Though the place itself is still boring as shit, so yeah. Number 298, the Celia Understair Grace. Pretty good for clumsy players that want to see all the things this HIV-infested hellscape has to offer, even if it does mean their inevitable series of deaths, which ends up in a cringe compilation somewhere on a channel you've never heard of before. So you better go into town knowing how to disable all of those magic barriers, or else the college students are gonna beat you up with facts and logic. Number 297, the Lanedale Capital of Ash Grace. Potentially useful for returning to if you wanted to check out the recently grilled roundtable hold, which now holds some cool new remembrance items. But besides that small niche, it only really leads you to the incredibly easy Gideon Ofnir with a steak next to him if you were somehow ass enough at the game to lose at this point whilst looking pretty, I suppose. And saying this out loud makes it seem like I've inhaled the biggest tank of 100% pure high quality copium because there's no one to kill you in a location where everyone's dead. I mean, almost everyone. Number 296, the East Gate Bridge Trestle Grace. I guess it's far enough away to make it a little unlikely for you to stumble upon these two, making you visit the walking mausoleum you can't even attack because fuck you, and enter the cave with a particularly good reward after clearing it. But that's of course the ideal scenario, because most likely you'll be wandering around aimlessly from a Grace that's smoking a crack pipe under a broken bridge, or you'll find these two Graces anyway, because man does that rise stick out like a sore thumb. Though there are a lot of lobsters and other enemies nearby, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone gets something out of it if they're feeling ready to throw hands with literally anything and everything that moves. Number 295, the Fallen Ruins of the Lake Grace. Considering that Liurnia is a place where you could get lost and confused on wherever the fuck you are more easily, there's an argument to be had for this one. Of course, if you've gotten either of these two, which ominously form the shape of a triangle around this building like they're trying to conduct an ancient ritual turning the local wildlife into Doritos, then it becomes quite lackluster, as in that case, its only purpose other than looking visually appealing becomes being slightly closer to the Rose Church, which... fair enough, I guess. Number 294, the Gate Town North Grace. I think you can tell by now that because we're just going over checkpoints that have a relatively similar purpose, I'm just picking a few Graces from a region before repeating that process for another, hence the amount of Liurnia Graces being ranked. Though I honestly feel a little conflicted on this one, because on one hand, it looks pretty, I mean, duh. But on the other, it only leads you to the Academy Gate Town, which most likely you've been to before, so the only case I can make for it is that it serves as a sort of midpoint for Liurnia, resulting in you resting at it and going wherever you want from there. Number 293, the Altus Highway Junction Grace. It looks nice and that's about it. No, seriously, I can't think of anything else to vouch for it. It's literally like 5 centimeters away from a slightly better Grace whilst only existing to save you like 2 seconds due to the path ahead separating, and that's it. I guess there exists the possibility of you never going to either of these two roads and instead opting to go here, but that really isn't saying much. Number 292, the Abandoned Coffin Grace. Great for respawning in case you die to the legendary time-bending dragon of the ancient bullshit order, giving you a warm welcome to one of the most visually pleasing locations in the entire game. Seriously, even after all these years, the Altus Plateau is the same eye candy it's always been. But other than that, it's not like you're gonna return to it anytime soon unless you've forgotten about the unsightly catacombs, which just means you don't care enough to pay it a visit anyway, so... Number 291, the Celia Backstreets Grace. Well, let's keep this a short entry and say there's nothing spectacular to mention other than it may be being useful in case you die on your way to the Church of the Plague or whilst trying to disable all of the magic barriers if you haven't already. And I guess if you're really cheap, you can keep trying to skip the Nox Duo instead of fighting them and getting actual equipment like the coward you are. Number 290, the Noxtella Waterfall Basin Grace. There's only 3 reasons keeping this grace from being a complete waste. It's far away from other graces, pretty looking, and useful in case you die to the Baleful Shadow, which, let's just be honest with ourselves here, you're not dying to the Baleful Shadow. His furry ass may have a greatsword imbued with literal death, but he's a fucking loser, which is what really drags this whole grace down. Number 289, the Crumbling Beast Grave Grace. Much like almost any other introductory grace, this one gets its use from being a potential warping point in case you wanted to leave and come back, but if you remain, the next grace is one ancient dragon away. And believe me, this would have been ranked much lower had I not known the inner thoughts of anyone who plays these games being to kill literally anything and everything that has a health bar outside of NPCs, no matter its size or intimidation. But even if you had self-control and didn't fight him, it still serves a distinct enough purpose for me to argue its spot on the list. Number 288, the Angel River Downstream Grace. Another side of Grace gleaming with potential only for, you guessed it, a stake of America to piss on its coffee mug and fart on its significance. A real tragedy, but I guess not all is lost since it's far enough away from others to potentially serve as a spot you are back to in case you don't feel like fighting the disabled zombie dragon with Pepsi Lightning, for example. Or if it's your first playthrough and didn't know it led to a boss despite that being a very niche and specific defense. Or if you just don't give a shit because fuck this tier list. Number 287, the Main Academy Gate Grace. Pretty useless as there's literally 2 graces beside the gate you'd normally face through with the glintstone key, rendering it as a slightly faster means to warp back and explore the academy if for some reason you decided to go somewhere else after you got the key specifically to enter the academy. Okay, what is going on here? The only realistic way of getting any sort of use for this piece of trash is if you were doing Yura's quest and were bad enough to die to the Ravenmount Assassin. Why the heck is this grace ranked so damn high? Number 286, the Earth Tree Sanctuary Grace. One of the nicest looking graces in my opinion, but the only purpose it serves is allowing you to explore this side area almost no one goes to, despite it having a Crucible Knight and a really good spell. And given that the next arguably even better looking grace is a few steps and a Black Knife Assassin away, I really can't rank this grace any higher as you're most likely not gonna warp somewhere else before getting the other one, and therefore it's almost completely pointless both before and after Leyndell becomes overcooked. Number 285, the Dragon Barrow West Grace. These are what I like to call lazy graces. They're a type of grace that just sorta exists in between everything else whilst not serving a very unique purpose of their own. They're just there so they could say they're there and that's about it. If they disappeared, people definitely would notice since they may be useful for resting at occasionally if you fought a lot of enemies or warping to so you can take another direction, but no one would miss them dearly, even if they do sometimes look gorgeous. Number 284, the Angel River Main Grace. There are 2 different ways of accessing this grace and both result in its existence being damn near pointless. How does that even happen? You can even make the argument that it could be useful in case you die or something because both methods of accessing it aren't too far away. But as previously mentioned, it's not completely worthless as it can be rested at to have a conversation with Miniature Rani and progress on important quest lines, so there's that and its appealing look, I guess. Number 283 is the Seaside Ruins Grace. Another beautiful looking checkpoint with a few, well, frankly one use, and that's dropping down the beach to happily wave at this crusty half-dead elf before abolishing his testicles into the Shadow Realm. Which isn't much, but hey, it's at least something, and I'll take something over nothing since this grace is a Limgrave where you're a low level, so maybe this bastard may score a few on you without being careful. Also, it drops a good Asha 4 if you care. Number 282 is the Fort of Reprimand Grace. This is the shit middle child of its 2 successful brothers. Unlike the graces it's sandwiched between, this barely helps you out at all on your journey throughout the fort. And that's only if you've entered via the gate outside, meaning that if you took the other grace, it just becomes so utterly useless there's a solid chance you might have not even known of its existence. I guess if you took the regular route, it would be nice to have as an easy way to respawn and fight Edred again, but this is a glorified normal enemy and you're in the DLC. No way in hell this guy's killing you more than a handful of times, which renders the one function this grace could technically serve to be so niche I have to squint my eyes to see anyone realistically using it. The youngest started a company while the eldest became a doctor, and this grace just became your average high school teacher. Number 281, the Hinterland Bridge Grace. It gets dragged down quite hard when taking into account its beautiful little sibling at the dumpster, but nobody can argue about how stunning the area around this grace is. It's got a speck of the beauty the other Hinterland Grace possesses, whilst allowing you to easily reach the 3 Sentinel duo if you still hadn't beaten them, and the Shaman Village, which you're gonna be returning to for one reason or another. Great checkpoint all around. Number 280, the Fortified Manor First Floor Grace. Apart from being somewhat useful to warp back to in case you wanted to invade Vargram for the Raging Wolf set and respawn if you got skill checks, this grace is relatively forgettable considering it's not too far away from the West Capital Ramparts Grace. What, you want me to mention that it looks nice for the 414th time? Enough being a broken record already. Number 279, the Craftsman's Shack Grace. It doesn't house any craftsmen nor merchants, but it sure as hell is a little more beneficial to have than some Shack Graces. Aside from the obvious, it's far enough away from other checkpoints to actually be useful. But Breadley, how's that? The village it leads to you has pathetically weak enemies and there's a stake next to the boss, so why is it ranked this high? Well, you'd be correct, but there's one ever-looming threat constantly harassing and bullying you no matter how hard you try to avoid it. That being this fucking headless abductor version. He will bleed your ass 5 times while spinning like a goddamn blender just from hitting him once faster than you could finish any sentence. Usually I wouldn't factor something in like this, but since dying to this enemy, which is very likely, would result in you needing to run back for like 2 minutes without the existence of this grace, I say it's important enough to belong this high on the list. Number 278 to 275, the Pilgrimage, Inhibition, 4th and 1st Marika Church Graces. What makes the average Church Grace good is their usability, as most of them make you rest out of sight to upgrade your flask since they almost always contain a Sacred Tear and the option to talk to Melina. Plus you're more likely to warp to these graces because they end up leading to important areas alongside looking about as pretty as the most beautiful underground system you could think of. And these almost have all of those things, hence their placement on the list. That's it. I have no clever jokes for this one. I'm feeling uninspired today, so let's just move on to the next. I hate this video. Number 274, the Church of Repose Grace. This is a magnificently stunning grace. Just look at it. It's got all the aforementioned positives of the other church graces, whilst being fantastically useful if you died due to how far away it is from any other grace that came before it. So why the hell is it ranked this low instead of being higher? Yeah, that's a real tragedy. Number 273, the Academy Gate Town Grace. Very nice visually, and you're likely to stumble upon it due to how close it is to an important map piece, whilst also giving you an easy way to respawn and warp so you can fully explore the Academy Gate Town and eventually reach this grace, alongside it being an area next to the Academy itself, which functions as both the most important location in Liurnia and the center of it all, meaning it's impossible to miss. My only complaint, however, is that the Academy Gate Town isn't particularly dangerous, meaning you're likely to not die, not to mention the fact that there's a couple slightly further off graces that pretty much function the same way, except a little worse. So all of that adds up to it not being higher up on the list. Number 272 is the Angel River Well Depths Grace. It's a nice looking grace far away from any other. You rest at it in case you'd like to warp to it later, or respawn in case you die to the horde of oversized insects that like to piss on everything that breathes. A side of grace with no personality or character that just exists to do its job and get a paycheck. Nothing more, nothing less. So let's move on before I die of boredom, since there's no room for me to complain about it. Number 271, the Kaled Highway South Grace. The highest compliment I could ever give this grace is that it's a nice way to easily respawn and fight X-Ikes if you haven't gotten this one yet, which is better in pretty much every way. That's it. That's all it does. Since no way you're missing this very important church up ahead, so the only other thing it really does is existing whilst looking beautiful, because holy shit. Also, a bit of a side note here, but have you ever seen that one Vati video where he pronounces X-Ikes as Exikis?
Such a grave transgression also retroactively helps to explain Exikis. Exikis.
Good lord, just hearing that shit is a crime against my ears. I'd rather hear about the lore of Godfrey's left nut. Number 270 is the Moonlight Altar Grace. A scenic place to warp to and respawn at, and use as a means of exploring the Moonlight Altar before you die to the crystal meth-infused dragon next door if you didn't get this grace for some reason. But unfortunately, these factors get shat on by the grace right below it, meaning a low ranking on the list. Number 269, the Cathedral of Manus Celis Grace. It doesn't offer much beyond giving you the ability to easily respawn against Adula and surrounding an attractive area. Therefore, I don't have many nice things to say about it. Not to mention that it's a glorified wyvern. I mean, come on, you fought enough of these to have a whole collection of their heads in your living room floor like some sort of Pokemon card addict. By this point, you're picking dragon hearts out of your fucking cereal box, so let's not pretend that you're gonna die like 20 times to Adula or anything. Also, it's only now that I realized that I'm a complete dumbass, because why did I rank these two separately when I could have just paired them up together? Less work for me. What the hell? Are you stupid? Number 268, the Eastern Tableland Grace. I think I speak for everyone when I say that this is definitively one of the graces of all time and that it serves a purpose. Number 267, the Road to the Manor Grace. It's painfully close to a lot of other graces that were ranked a lot lower, but given that you'll warp to it plenty of times whilst doing what is statistically the quest most people complete just to talk to EG and get a decent talisman whilst being offered an easy way of getting Somber Stones early, I firmly think this grace still deserves to be ranked higher than the rest of these other Liurnia checkpoints, and if anything, it deserves to be ranked even further up on the list. Number 266 and 65, the Storm Hill and Isolated Merchant Shack Graces. There's two main uses for a grace, either to respawn at in case the area up ahead turns out to be particularly challenging, or to use as a means of warping conveniently to a place of interest for a multitude of reasons. So simply put, these two are convenience graces, since they either involve you warping back to them when your broke ass makes some money to buy shit with, or they're simply there because they look pretty whilst giving you the option to go multiple branching paths. Guess which one of them I'm referring to. I bet you'll never know. Number 264, the Jarberg Grace. One of the coziest graces with the shortest name ever for one. It's got the benefit of you potentially returning to it a couple times if you're doing Dialos' quest for the rewards, alongside the absolutely incredible variety of crafting materials and pots you get, and given its distance from other checkpoints, you physically can't bring yourself to have any complaints about this one. He'll be sad if you do, and you don't want that. Number 263 is the Altus Plateau Grace. It looks absolutely magnificent whilst putting you closer to the Knight's Cavalry boss in comparison to this other grace, and that's about all I'm willing to say in its defense. It's crazy to me how there's enough checkpoints in this game that are close to each other for people to start making memes about them, because this shit is questionable at best, especially because the small distance between them results in both being ass. Number 262, the Dynasty Mausoleum Entrance Grace. I was about to shower this one with an endless sea of compliments for being useful regardless of how you enter Magwan Palace, but guess what statue greeted me and told this grace to go suck a fat one? Why do so many of these exist? It's only now after writing and recording these entries that I realized just how many stakes of America do this. Do they just think everyone that goes through these areas hates even the thought of respawning by one, thus placing a grace a bit further away? I have so many questions that need to be answered. Maybe Miyazaki just occasionally feels like taking out his anger on these poor graces that did nothing wrong. Whatever the case, this grace goes from amazingly beneficial to barely of any use. I guess the upside is the grace's continuing functionality as a beautiful looking warping spot if, for example, you wanted to buy more items from the nomadic merchant setting up shop in the worst possible location, or a resting place since it's relatively far away from the other side that came before it, which has a lot of brutal enemies threatening enough to make you in a desperate need for one. But yeah, there's nothing else to say other than these graces are unfortunate victims of a tragic bullying spree unleashed upon them for no rhyme or reason. Also, wow, this was a long entry. Why the hell do I give enough of a fuck to write down 6 entire lines of text for a single video game checkpoint? Number 261, the Siofra River Well Depths Grace. It's very useful due to its distance, thus giving it some warping and respawning potential, but god damn it, this site would have never made it this far on the list if it wasn't your most likely introduction to the real underground of the lands between, which made you fully realize just how big this game is. Going down an inconspicuous elevator before realizing you've been descending a bit too much for a little too long and finding the fascinating Siofra River region is a special feeling you only get once in your entire life, and it's beautiful. Number 260 is the South of the Lookout Tower Grace. It's a grace that leads to a couple interesting places like the Demi-Human Forest Ruins and the Pilgrimage Church, for example, making it an okay warping place in case you forgot to go somewhere or if you want to look at the nice grass, I guess. Sorry, my enthusiasm is out the window and there's still 259 graces left. Fuck me! Number 259, the East Raya Lucaria Gate Grace. Good for resting at in case you haven't run into the other gate and or don't have the key yet or don't know about the Bellum Church Grace, which yeah, it sorta gets overshadowed by this one. That's not to say it's useless or even not good, but in comparison, these two are very uneven. Oh well, at least it's not like the Recluse's River downstream Grace and actually serves as a pretty good respawning ground for the Knight's Cavalry boss. It definitely could have been dealt a shittier hand, that's for sure. Number 258, the Slumbering Wolf Shack Grace. Upon finding the Albinoric woman on the stunningly amazing cliff end, you can go ahead and interact with Old Albus for the medallion and get her to join you for both the snazzy reward and her. Yes, her. You get Latenna because this questline gives you bitches within the palm of your hand. This could have been a completely average run-of-the-mill checkpoint you forget about all the time, but instead it was given a golden ticket, leading you to a nice spirit ash and a somber ancient dragon smithing stone through using it in some way. So because of that, I have no choice but to give it a high ranking. Lucky bastard. Number 257, the Fisher Cross Grace. I sincerely apologize, but if I mention how important a grace is for warping to and respawning at due to its distance alongside some beauty it offers, I will legitimately die of boredom, so let's please move it along before the monotony consumes me. Number 256, the Across the Roots Grace. This is by far one of the lowest ranked graces out of all the sites, which let you immediately retry a boss the moment you die to them. They're naturally a lot better than any average grace due to their existence, allowing you to change and make any necessary adjustments to your build whilst letting you leave and come back till you're stronger and or more capable of taking out the boss it's right next to. But since this one's next to the easiest, most pathetic group of enemies that forgot to level vigor in the entire game, its usefulness becomes severely lower than the otherwise would have been. Imagine being a group of simps so hyper-fixated on protecting a woman that you forget to invest runes into not dying to a couple slaps in the face. That's tragic. Number 255, the South Raya Lucaria Gate Grace. It's naturally more useful than the other Gate Grace, considering that not only you're more likely to stumble upon this one, but it's more useful since you can very easily reach Smaragd from here, giving you a reason to immediately warp back to it so you can reach the Grand Academy whilst being far away and heavily guarded from other graces. Which also means you're likely to have skipped a lot of the Academy Gate Town and could use it as a respawn point in case you get your ass grilled to a crisp by a giant two-wheeled head with the power of a few minimum wage workers and God's flame on its side. Also, it just looks fucking fantastic. My god. Number 254, the Earth Tree Gazing Hill Grace. Bit of a redundant name for a region where anywhere you go, this massive fucking golden tree will always be gazing upon you, but regardless, it's a pretty good grace saved from not being worth talking about by its importance to two very big quest lines. But apart from being accessible via two different paths, I struggle to find a way to make this entry any longer due to its other benefits being its looks whilst leading you to multiple branching paths, so... Number 253, the Shadow Altus West Grace. This site is a godsend if you were to accidentally fall off the Fog Rift Fort, which definitely hasn't happened to me before. But that's me trying to find an argument for this grace, because I honestly thought it would be much better than this. You're familiar with it by now. It's a trend we keep seeing where stakes of America just outright say fuck you to the opportunity of multiple graces ever being good. God, who knew that America and her stakes would be such rude assholes? This is unacceptable. Still an amazing addition to the game though, so they can do whatever they want, I suppose. Number 252, the Calum Ruins Grace. Now we've transitioned into some actually decent graces, and let me tell you right now, I'm not too thrilled about ranking these. Not just because they're more or less the same in terms of the niche they serve overall, but also because in order for me to keep you from clicking away or skipping ahead of this segment, I'm gonna have to pull a bunch of jokes out of my ass just to keep you people of similar insanity entertained. After all, who watches a fucking grace ranking video? Oh, right, the grace. It's alright, I guess. Saves you a bit of time when finding the Mad Pumpkin duo for a good item that you'll still never use most likely. Number 251, the Crumbling Beast Grave Depths Grace. I'm stumped on this one. It's one of the most awkwardly placed graces in the entire game, though it definitely still serves a big purpose. It's rather close to the two other sites it's sandwiched between, but just far enough to serve as a good warp or respawn point in case you die to the giant pile of rabbit dog human hybrids having way too much fun with lightning and ceramic shards they found on the floor. Or if you wish to explore the side area that almost no one goes to, so it's definitely not there without function, and I'll respect that. Number 250 is the Shadow View Cross Grace. At first, it may seem like this grace exists purely for sightseeing and looks, but it actually serves a pretty big purpose. Considering that you'll most likely access it via unlocking the Spirit Springs, that means you'll be using it as a means of respawning due to how far away it is from any other grace, especially due to Shadow Altus being a particularly challenging area. That, coupled with it being a site you'd most likely warp to due to what was just mentioned, is why it deserves this spot on the list. It's also exceptionally useful for people like me who are convinced their character can survive falls that break their legs with no hope of survival. Can't forget about that. Number 249, the Alot River Downstream Grace. This grace is directionally far away from any other checkpoint. Like very far away. No matter what way you try to reach it, this grace is always going to be far away from another resting place, thus granting it a lot more mileage than other graces focused purely on the intent of resting out or being warped to. Plus it just looks really cool. I mean, how can you not be charmed by a grace atop the the end of a massive waterfall, leading to even better looking sights, pun intended. Also, side note, although the site exists for the obvious intent of going here and then to the cerulean coast, you can still get use out of it by going up and then doing a little horse parkour to reach a lock river. So that technically means it serves a purpose regardless of how you reach it. Number 248, the Bonnie Village Grace. I just realized how boring it is to rank all the DLC graces, since there's barely any illogically placed ones for me to make fun of, resulting in all their entries being the exact same. Like, what clever joke am I supposed to write down here? It's a pretty looking checkpoint to warp to or respawn at, due to it leading you to various points of interest whilst knowing you're bad enough to die to a lot of the greater potentates. There, now take your number and get out of my sight. Number 247, the Deep Siofra Well Grace. This grace leads to some of the most interesting key points in all of Caelid, that being the furry rune bear on crack who can't stop diving into your ass like a WWE wrestler, and the Caelid Coliseum guarded by a big fucking jar and its 3 fanatics, with both giving it the neat purpose of respawning at or being warped to. Also, fuck this bear in particular. Go be hairy somewhere else like your cold frigid brother. Number 246, the Worshipper's Woods Grace. This one just sorta exists and doesn't do anything important or unique whatsoever, so I guess unless you miss something prompting you to return to it, or we're just really struggling with the enemies for some reason, this grace will remain as a pretty looking couch potato that enjoys living under a bridge its whole life. But I suppose it could be useful against these Minecraft skeleton tier horned ascetic snipers, so I'm not gonna rank it too low. Number 245, the North Highway South Grace. You already know why this grace is ranked as high as it is. If this single shot of me doesn't tell the whole purpose as to why it exists, then you're blind and I'm sorry about that. Number 244, the Bridge of Sacrifice Grace. A nice scenic grace due to it having you at a crossroads, meaning realistically you'd return to it a couple of times, especially if you wanted to do Arena's quest, and considering that it's quite far from any other site whilst probably being one of the more well-known checkpoints due to introducing you to the Weeping Peninsula, which has a metric shit ton of amazing items, there's hardly any room for complaints on this one. Number 243 is the Cerulean Coast West Grace. The fuck's it doing all the way out here? This is one socially anxious grace, preferring to enjoy the sights of an ashen beach than to be even 10 meters close to another grace. But despite its distance and the unforgettable view, this checkpoint remains as easily one of the most forgettable out of any. Because not only have I completely forgotten about it, but I bet 5 slices of bread that is statistically one of the top 5 least discovered graces. But I guess it's average enough to not be completely pointless, given that it leads you to some cool parts of the Cerulean Coast with a few decent items and a boss with a name so funny you couldn't possibly come up with a counter argument to ranking this grace any lower. Seriously though, Mariga. I know we have names like Moonrathil, but this is just a Timu version of an existing Elden Ring character. What else is Miyazaki gonna come up with? A name like Margot or something? Number 242, the Liurnia Tower Bridge Grace. It serves exactly one purpose, and that's providing you with an easy way to respawn against the Michelin Man with diabetes so you don't throw your controller with the speed of a NASA rocket into the nearest children's hospital. Could have simply just placed a Stake of America, but you know what? A grace works just fine, so I'll shut my fucking mouth and move on. Number 241, the Behind the Fort of Reprimand Grace. I actually needed to double check if I ranked this one previously, which I haven't, so I'm here to shed some light on how spectacular it is. Of course, if you've gone to the fort using the traditional, boring way, it might seem like a relatively useless checkpoint, as you can completely ignore its existence and use this one for convenient respawning to Edred in case you somehow die to him. But we all know that feeling you get of accessing this site after venturing through the Land of Shadows wilderness through 2 massive Spirit Spring super jumps leading you to the massive fort, and just how utterly unforgettable it is. This shit is infinitely more hype than the fort itself, and it's the best of both other Reprimand Graces, since not only does it introduce you to this dungeon, but it also serves as a respawning point for Edred. Suck on that, loser! Sorry, I just needed to let out some steam, because as cool looking as it is, like I said, it's the less likely method of entry out of the 2, which is significant enough for it to still be ranked lower than I'd like. Man, fuck being unbiased. Whose idea was it to make this video? Number 240, the Liurnia Highway North Grace. This is a sad tale of a grace that had potential only for it to be dragged down into a subpar level due to the bad checkpoints it fell in with. You have an easy way to respawn upon dying to the Knight's Cavalry whilst leading you to a Catacombs dungeon alongside these ruins, and yet it tragically fell all the way down into the slums, never to see happier days. And alright, I'm done being overdramatic. Moving on. What am I even talking about? It's still a quality grace that's good for respawning at if you haven't found this one, which you most likely haven't, so it's not like it and the other Liurnia Highway Grace are falling in its general direction and deleting its purpose entirely. This idiot just fucking die already. Number 239, the Scorched Ruins Grace. This is one of those checkpoints that just make me go Alright, just take your ranking and go. There's pretty much nothing to be said for a grace that's got all the aforementioned positives of other DLC checkpoints, so I'll just say it's a nice warping spot in case you forgot the Blade of Mercy talisman, or if you just don't have the bell bearing yet and want more red flesh mushrooms to craft spots capable of taking out these burning giant sentient basket things. Number 238, 37, and 36, the rest of the Castle Morn Graces. Blah blah blah, ranked all of these together because their functionality is the same with some distance between them. You've heard it enough times by now and I've had enough. Honestly, even if some Legacy Dungeon Graces were slightly worse or better than others to be paired together, I might just not give a shit and do it anyway, cause I just want to be done with this stupid video as soon as possible. Number 235, the 4 Belfries Grace. You're statistically gonna return to this grace at most like 3 times, instantly making it one of the checkpoints you warp to the most, with 3 of the 4 Belfries leading you to unique imbued sword key necessant areas you normally can't access, and considering that all of the locations associated with this grace look fucking sick, you'd be sentenced to life in prison for thinking this shit doesn't deserve a ranking this high. Though in hindsight, all of the Belfry places are kinda lackluster without many good items, so there's that I guess. Number 234, the Church of the Plague Grace. You're likely to warp here a couple times more than your average Church Grace due to Millicent's quest, but outside of that, you could also potentially return to enter the Celia hideaway or just go to this side of Caelid more easily, carving out a comfortable niche for itself, especially due to its distance from other sites. Finally, a grace that stands up for itself and doesn't rely on its pretty looks to get just barely enough pity points to not be ranked somewhere low, though this one definitely comes with its beauty as an added bonus if anyone still thought it didn't deserve to be placed this high on the list. Number 233 is the Saints Bridge Grace. Apart from being an optimal pumpkin helm farming spot, you'll most likely run into this grace at least once in your playthrough, as it can be reached in a multitude of different ways whilst being next to a campsite with a really good early game weapon, making it a great spot for picking different paths that each lead to something of interest. And Alexander's there. Can't forget about him the first time you meet him here, right? Especially because of how hilarious it is to smack his ass with a giant club just like in the gameplay trailer. Number 232, 31, and 30, the rest of the Karya Manor Graces. It's almost as if whoever's responsible for making the Legacy Dungeon Graces is separate from the ones that make almost every other grace. Either that or they suddenly realized that they needed to get serious, or else Miyazaki was gonna slowly realize that some checkpoints just outright don't make sense, or maybe it's him making all the graces and he's just occasionally placing down intentionally illogical ones because he's bored and wasn't allowed to make the Madness and Sleep Swamp we'd all hoped for. Oh right, the graces. They're cool I guess, but are also about the same quality as almost any other Legacy Dungeon grace. You rested them in case you die or need to take a breather while on your way to the boss, and maybe warp using them. That's it. Number 229, the Church of the Cuckoo Grace. Apart from the ridiculous name, this is a fine quality grace made very far away from any other checkpoints that's just as, if not better than it, because the entire Raya Lucaria Legacy Dungeon is home to some of the best graces in the game. Additionally, it's basically impossible for you to miss, especially since it's the first grace you can stumble upon in the Academy. So rejoice at its existence and feel free to die like a casual as many times as you wish before finally reaching the next big site. Number 228 to 225, the rest of the Stormveil Graces. I paired the 4 remaining Stormveil Legacy Dungeon Graces together since, much like the previous examples, their purpose and value is essentially the same in terms of both gameplay and visuals. Checkpoints that are far enough away from one another to give them their own personal space, which is fitting since they're all located in Stormveil Castle, like a band of friends or brothers that refuse to let the world separate them by joining together to start a company or whatever. I don't know, you finish the sentence, I'm feeling lazy again. Number 224, the Shaded Castle Inner Gate Grace. A neat sight in case you die to a bunch of HIV-infected knights and pages while on your way to the boss, who's just another bell-bearing hunter but with a slightly cooler backstory and better items to offer. Made even better if you were someone who struggles with royal revenants and happened to find this grace before attempting to square up against those fucks who came straight out of Bloodborne. An all-around decent checkpoint. Number 223, the Dragon Temple Altar Grace. Mildly fun facts, for whatever reason I accidentally paired this grace up with a set of checkpoints much better than it, and only realized it after rechecking multiple times because I guess I just forgot like a dumbass. Every member of the Dragon Altar family, well except the transept site, is at least decent, and that's due to the generous distance between all of them alongside their pretty looks, and not to mention that they're usually very good for warping to and respawning at. But what truly makes this group of graces so special is how the grace discovered after defeating its respective boss actually serves that same niche to a similar degree, instead of this being cast aside into the darkest corners and remaining imprisoned there for the rest of its life. Glad to know that not every one of these are neglected and unloved, because they deserve more than to just be rested at once after defeating a boss, god damn it. Number 222 to 201, the underground graces. Seeing these graces makes me happy. Not because they're overall pretty useful and straightforward with the point as to why they exist, but because of how similar they are, meaning I could just check off 22 goddamn graces out the list, which makes my life a whole lot easier. So I'm sure you've noticed that some underground graces are missing. That's because some of them are a little more important with an added layer of content or specialty than others, whilst potentially looking a lot more attractive than the usual. Anyways, prepare to hear me talking about nothing but underground graces for the next like 5 minutes. Number 200, the... Halfway there. I've been working on this godforsaken video for so long, I forgot how long it's even been. Ranking every side of grace? Really? Do these checkpoints that come from a 3-year-old game hold the most potential for views out of any other idea I've got? Almost 200 uploads. It's been almost 3 years and 200 videos, and yet I still can't even get 500 subscribers. I knew what I signed up for, but even so, I couldn't have possibly imagined to get this desperate. You and your RNG-ridden small YouTuber hellscape, why did it have to be this way? I just needed a little luck to avoid all of this and make you a lot of money. Well, it doesn't matter. Like I said, I knew what I signed up for when I chose this as my wanted full-time job. I don't care how much bullshit I need to overcome and endure to find success and be the new Breadley with the most subs. Giving up is the last thing on my mind, and if I have to rank every goddamn grace in Elden Ring, then so be it. Let's get it over with. Number 200, the High Road Cave Grace. The boss itself isn't particularly anything special, much like the talisman, but my god did they go above and beyond when designing this cave visually. It feels like I'm in a lush tropical cave with all sorts of vegetation, water, and just the right amount of light penetrating it all. It's pretty hidden away and has a lot of annoying man-bats and pitfalls, but that doesn't matter when it looks this sexy. Ridiculous! Number 199, the Sealed Tunnel Grace. It's pretty much the exact same as any other tunnel grace, except it was blessed with a bigger reason to be reached, because it just so happened to have a smithing stone bell bearing, which is enough for me to keep my mouth shut and move on. Number 198, the Lakeside Crystal Cave Grace. This grace is one hell of a mixed bag. Incredibly good looking, but not very rewarding in terms of the items you get. Quite fun to traverse whilst looking pretty, but with a bunch of previously seen enemies and a repeat boss you wipe the floor with. So overall, I think I'll rank it slightly higher than the average cave grace. Hold on, is that the Slumbering Wolf's shack it leads to? Never mind, actually, this is one of the best cave sites of grace, and don't even bother saying otherwise. Number 197, the Ruined Labyrinth Grace. It's a checkpoint called a Site of Grace with absolutely nothing special to say about it. You may or may not respawn or warp to it, and it just exists between everything, so just keep moving on ahead and pretend you never saw it, because that's how forgettable it is. Number 196, the Cave of the Forlorn Grace. I was pleasantly surprised to discover just how good Consecrated Snowfield's caves were, because, you know, it's Consecrated Snowfield. The DLC to the DLC Frigid Outskirts location with slightly better everything and more of a reason to visit. This place is what it's like to live in Antarctica. Either way, it possesses some incredible scenery whilst giving you an amazing weapon as a reward for beating the same enemy you destroy every Tuesday. What's not to like? Also, the Grace itself has a fucking dragon sitting besides it, which is easily more than enough to rank it this high. Number 195, the Coastal Cave Grace. An incredibly early game grace that's easy to spot due to being relatively close to a useful merchant, made even better by the fact that it's one of the more memorable locations because of box quests being progressed there and the nice scenery. But all of those factors pale in comparison to being the cave that leads you to the Church of Dragon Communion, giving you access to some of the best arcane dragon spells in the game, meaning you cannot miss out on exploring this cave no matter what, and that it's way better than your average cave grace. Number 194, the Liurnia Lake Shore Grace. I know I've been constantly complaining throughout the duration of this entire video, but the further up we go on the list, the harder I have to try to find something clever or funny to say when ranking these graces, since they naturally improve to the point where I just become a broken record saying the same thing over and over. Like, how am I supposed to keep you entertained through this, and how are you still watching? Anyways, the grace, yeah, it's, alright, I guess. Very hard to miss whilst looking neat and introducing you to 3 main paths you can take, alongside being right right next to the nomadic merchant, which is always beneficial for any checkpoint. Just don't ever ask where he got them from. I think you'd rather not know. Okay, I'm done with the whole acting sad and being depressed bit. It's getting a little stale, to be honest, just like the footage I keep reusing. Number 193, 92, and 91, the Ruined Forge Graces. These are all graces that lead to some of the most visually pleasing underground systems you could ever ask for, whilst also containing some of the best weapons in the DLC alongside a whole bunch of smithing stones, but you probably only care about these ones. Simple, unique forges that still kick your ass if you're being reckless despite them not housing a boss, and instead a puzzle for you to figure out. In conclusion, these structures know exactly what they're doing and give their respective graces all they need to be placed on the higher end of the tunnel spectrum. A+ from me. Though the graces themselves are still nothing too special. Number 190, the Altar South Grace. Unlike its two brothers, this grace has a lot more positives to justify its existence as a checkpoint. First of all, it's miles away from any other grace whilst possessing the same level of attractiveness regardless of what time of day it is. Second of all, the rise next to it, when unlocked, provides you with Rani's Dark Moon, one of the most powerful spells in the whole game. Third of all, you'll either warp or respawn here one way or the other, trying to find all the confusingly gargantuan turtles with no lore explanation as to why they're just hanging on a cliff, resulting in it receiving my Breadley seal of approval and a high ranking on the list. See, if only we had more graces like these, Miyazaki. How about you and your team put in the same level of efforts placing them as you do modeling feet all day? Though I'm still confused as to who the fuck Chelona is. Number 189, the Pillar Path Waypoint Grace. It looks pretty and leads to multiple important locations whilst being far away from any other sites, and that's about it. I've summed up the entire purpose of this checkpoint faster than you can finish eating your sandwich. I mean, I guess you could say it's also useful for respawning too in case you die while on your way to the suppressing pillar or to the dragon's pit via the ruined birds or ancient dragon man, but come on, let's just move on and put the dragon hearts in the bag and give it to Egon before he starts moaning again. Number 188, the Third Church of Marika Grace. Easily one of the best Marika Church Graces in the whole game to absolutely no one's surprise. I mean, come on, how can you best a grace with multiple branching paths to choose from, the option to talk to Milena, and fill your recently acquired Flask of Wondrous Physic with a nice healing bubble tier that came with it, all while marveling at the simple elegance of the beach it's right next to. Pure fucking quality at its finest. Number 187, the Waypoint Ruined Cellar Grace. For once, whoever is responsible for making the boss graces decided to give this one an actual purpose besides looking pretty and being rested at one time. If you're a sorcery build, going back here at least 10 times is a must, because most of the shit Selen offers is actually pretty damn good, especially after giving her all of the scrolls. Even if you don't care about intelligence, it's worth doing her quest and helping out Jaren for a juicy reward, or Selen anyways, because either you really love seeing her turn into a stone meatball, or just really want that glintstone crisp. It's definitely not the prettiest, but it's one of the most useful and furthest away from any other, just from how many times you have to return to it, so there's that. Number 186, the Rani's Rise Grace. This is a site that spec'd all its usability on being a warping space. You will never return to a grace more often than this one, and that's a lie. It's a complete lie. There's other graces you'd return to more often, but still, even if you weren't doing Rani's quest, which is without a doubt the greatest, most intricately designed quest in FromSoft's history, which is reflected by the Age of the Stars ending statistically being the one the majority goes for, its significant distance advantage and the Rani's Chamber Grace taking a fucking power nap alongside the consistently pleasing interior makes it no doubt one of the better graces. Number 185, the Deep-Root Depths Grace. It's a neat looking grace that serves as a checkpoint and a warping place. Fucking yippee. What, you expecting me to write a whole paragraph about one of the most unoriginally named graces ever? That old woman can mourn somewhere else about Godwin, cause I don't care enough to write anymore for this entry. Number 184, the Dynasty Mausoleum Midpoint Grace. Unlike the grace that came before it, this one doesn't get bullied by a stick of Marika hard enough for me to write a whole essay out of grief, but instead functions as a resting place if you wanted to change something about your build to take out Mog, who's a challenging enough boss for that positive to matter a lot. Other than that, it could be used as an easy means of respawning, for example when you're fighting Vare, because for some reason that toilet paper wrapped, pathetic, plant-wielding excuse for a servant has Grail's Dragon Barrow tier scaling, which resulted in me dying to him more than most main bosses, no kidding. So yeah, most likely he'd kick your ass a couple times before finally throwing in the towel, or maybe that's just a problem I suffer from personally. Either way, it looks pretty with a lot of distance, so let's not forget about that. Number 183 is the Templetown Ruins Grace. Incredibly good for respawning to in case you wanted to take out the hyper-syphilis-infested lobster soldiers that can't stop enjoying going through puberty, whilst being very far away from any other Grace and looking nice, thus serving as a neat warping point. Reliable with no complaints whatsoever, shows up to work on time and gets shit done till it clocks out. Now that's a Grace of the month right there. Number 182, the Angel River Sluice Gate Grace. Finally, a Grace I can rest at and be completely alone with no NPC or enemy trying to bother my ass or kill me while AFK. They were definitely cooking when making the coziness of this Grace. Nothing but the sweet sounds of a great waterfall, satisfying the ears of anyone resting at it, alongside a spectacular view of your next death-filled adventure. Despite it seeming like the site only has this to offer, that's not the case at all, as it's significantly far away from any other while serving as a good respawning point in case you die to the... Okay, maybe just ignore what I just said about the respawn part and focus on the rest, since interestingly, it's only good for respawning if you discovered it while on the other side of the wall, because it's accompanied by your favorite earthly critters whilst no longer being viable for warping to, given its short distance from the Angel River well depths Grace and only leading you to one direct path. So it's a trade-off between being either good for respawning or warping to, depending on which side you discover it in. In other words, it's got a little something for everyone. Wait, I just realized I wrote one of the longest paragraphs in the list for a Grace called Angel River fucking Sluice Gate. What has my life become? Number 181 and 180, the Frenzied Flame Village Outskirts and Mausoleum Compound Graces. Both look stunningly gorgeous and have a lot of potential for returning to, due to one allowing you to duplicate not one but two remembrances of your choosing, while the other leads you to a site with some of the best, most fun sorceries in the whole game, with a solution you either may not know about or simply don't have, alongside the Frenzied Flame Village itself and Bike's Church. Sure, a lot of people may skip this part of Liurnia, but their value and placement on the list is impossible to argue with. Literally speaking, I bet you 5 Schrodinger dollars you can't convince me to change the ranking of these Graces no matter what. Number 179, the Boiled Prawn Shack Grace. A high quality Grace for a high quality plate of fresh boiled prawns salted perfectly by the world's most tender of connoisseurs and thieves, with an even better dish ready to be served by yours truly after a quick quest. Just make sure to not free a certain dung-eating maniac, and this evenly distanced Grace will remain as one of your most memorable yet. A reminder of the first time you stumbled upon and made friends with such a talented cook. I rest my case for this Grace much like how I rest my body with a happy belly full of boiled seafood. Number 178, the Grand Altar of Dragon Communion Grace. This is the daddy of all Dragon Communion Graces. You've seen a few ancient dragons in a ruined cathedral before, but how about a gargantuan wyvern slain with a massive toothpick made of lightning that's so big it even takes up a shitload of space on the map? Easily one of the coolest, most scenic Graces in the entire game, and that's an undeniable fact. Now, if only everything else was just as awesome, because although it's quite far away from any other site, giving it plenty of use alongside leading you to Charo's hidden grave, you can only pick a whopping 2 dragon spells. Well, technically 3, but that's only after New Game Plus, so the only other items it's offering are the Priestess Heart and either the Flowerstone Gavel or Dragon Bolt of Florasax alongside Florasax herself. But given that all of those items give you more than enough reason to come back here considering how amazing they are, this Grace will always stay on the higher end of the list no matter what. Number 177, the Impassable Great Bridge Grace. More like the Passable Great Bridge. I don't get paid enough by YouTube to make funny jokes all the time. In fact, I don't get paid by YouTube at all, hence my desperation in this video's existence. Very pretty and useful when the portal isn't active during the Radon Festival exclusively, when the entire castle's troops decide to take a day off to attend their half-rotten commander's forced funeral, but not too useful given that most people only go to Redmane Castle once they know it's time to fight Radon. Which is what I would have said had there not been a bunch of great items scattered across the Legacy Dungeon that are closest to this one, while serving as another potential warping place in case you went here before it was time for the festival, or just happened across it and are now being ass blasted off the... Yeah, no, this Grace fucks. There's no counter argument to be had here. Number 176, the Church District High Road Grace. Very special given its significant distance and it leading you to the Meter Cathedral, Rabat's Rise, and the Church District section of Shadow Keep, as the name would suggest, whilst looking incredibly eye-pleasing. At least until you remember that you have to either take out this burning trash pile or ignore it and move on with your life. Much like how I'm gonna move on to the next entry because I've run out of nice things to say to it. Number 175, the Foot of the Four Belfries Grace. I knew this grace was good from the get-go, but it's only after writing this entry and focusing on it that I realized just how truly amazing it is. Incredibly far away from any other grace, giving you potential as a warping point, alongside a great means of respawning due to it leading you to a shitload of enemies you need to kill for you to properly rob all their stuff, and the Four Belfries themselves, which take quite a while to reach despite the seemingly short distance between its grace and this one. Hard to miss, pretty to look at, serves multiple unique functions. Yep, that is a top tier grace right there. Number 174, the Castle Lenses Checkpoint Grace. I've been referring to plenty of graces as checkpoints to avoid repetition, but this one's literally called a checkpoint, which I've never noticed before. Either way, it's practically the same as any other legacy dungeon grace designed to get you from point A to point B with minimal suffering and the ability to fuck off until you're stronger than the enemies constantly taking turns kicking your ass, except this one comes with the added benefit of being a DLC grace, meaning most of the time it's gonna have prettier sights and a bigger emphasis on being grants for respawning, which is the case for this one because Moonrathil is gonna delete your entire health bar like your character never even leveled up since taking their first steps into Limgrave. Number 173, the Bower of Bounty Grace. Grace is located in very foggy areas, tend to be more useful, especially when functioning as a midpoint for the surrounding area. You could pick a direction to go from here and potentially die, only to come back a few moments later thanks to this site blessed with its own unique purpose. Number 172, the Recluse's River Downstream Grace. I'm still bitter about this grace's high ranking due to it leaving its brother hanging, so I won't say any more for this entry. Not that it even needs something to be said about it, given that a couple hundred entries ago I explained its whole story. And in case you just woke up to me saying this due to you accidentally falling asleep early, then the side of Grace situation is crazy. That's all you need to know. Number 171, the Gatefront Grace. Is this ranked particularly high due to it being one of the very first graces you encounter in Limgrave, whilst being very easy to spot due to the areas it leads you to, alongside being the site where Melanie gives you torrent? I mean, kinda, but I'd just like to mention how an astoundingly high amount of people, including myself, have warped back to this specific checkpoint just to bully this one Godric soldier and test how strong a new weapon or spirit ash is. We could have used any other grace with an enemy close by, since there's no shortage of those, but we intentionally chose this specific one for no apparent reason. Though unfortunately, that doesn't magically mean it's gonna be ranked higher up on the list. Me, from the past, who thought otherwise, like an idiot. Oh yeah, you can also use it as a method of respawning early game, considering that Godric's bullshit army is especially plentiful here. Also, it's quite far away from any other grace. Also, it's not the only one where Melanie can give you torrent. Also, number 170, the forest-spanning Great Bridge Grace. This grace almost has it all. The convenience, the looks, the distance and potential as a warping space, but I still don't understand one thing, and it's the devs feeling the need to place down a convenient portal teleporting you directly to the other side of the bridge with no effort, rendering this one almost completely worthless. Isn't the bridge supposed to be broken, thus making the player explore and travel across the foggy forest so that they reach this site on the other side? Was that the original idea before deciding to place the portal down for whatever reason? Did they like playtest the specific area of Altus Plateau and thought it sucked or something? I mean, thank you, it saves a lot of time and almost nobody bothers, but still, what about this one? Number 169, the Gate Town Bridge Grace. Apart from the obvious, this grace only really makes you warp to it in case you wanted to do Hiera's quest, since it really doesn't lead to any other key points of interest, not to mention that it's a little close to a lot of other graces. Like seriously, there's almost nowhere you could go without seeing another checkpoint after a minute of riding torrent, which is more impressive than if you were to not run into any. Though it does possess one trick up its sleeve, which is being useful for respawning to the Knight's Cavalry boss, just in case you either didn't reach this one right here or felt like shaving a few seconds off due to it being slightly closer. Strong emphasis on the former, as that's why it's living and breathing out in the rich neighborhood instead of the slums. Number 168, the Church of Dragon Communion Grace. This site may not introduce you to a new area, but it definitely introduces you to a new absolute powerhouse of a spell class. Strong enough to delete the kneecaps of anything that isn't a main boss for that matter. Strong enough to give you the desire of exterminating enough dragons for you to have an entire mukbang session's worth of dragon hearts to gorge on before discovering its older brother and warping back to both due to their distance and you most likely not having enough dragon hearts to afford everything. It might not look like it, but these two share the word convenient as their middle name, and for good reason, though they do both become quite useless if you're not planning on becoming an arcane or face build, so they do have to avoid overstepping their boundaries. Number 167 and 66, the Gelmir and Sainted Hero's Grave Graces. Heroes' Graves are naturally more content-filled and unique than regular caves and other underground systems the player traverses throughout, meaning they're gonna outperform them most of the time, and that includes these ones as well, resulting in their graces being a little more important. These ones in particular don't have much to offer in terms of unique boss battles, much like all the other graves, but although they possess some fun gimmicks that make them special, you end up not getting as many good items in comparison to every other grave, hence their slightly lower ranking. Also, wow, this might have been the most boring entry I've written by far. Holy shit, not a single joke to be seen. This text is bland. Number 165, 64, and 63, the rest of the heroes' graves graces. Anything that could be said in support of these graces has already been said like 5 seconds ago, and to not look like an even bigger NPC repeating the same shit over and over more than I already am, I'll just say they offer better items, which is the big difference between them and the other two. Fun facts, by the way, I accidentally deleted the original script for this entry and just could not give any less of a fuck because it took like 1 minute to just make a new one, which is a testament to how little there is to be said for these despite how damn good they are. Except that's not what happened at all. The old entry was still in the script and I later found it while skimming only to delete its ass anyways because how dare it hide from me? I think these sites are getting to me. Number 162, 61, and 60, the Leyndell Graces. Each one is equally integral to Leyndell's traversability, and what's nice about them is that you'll most likely run into all of them because despite you being able to take multiple pets in the royal capital, those pets have been designed to lead you to the exact same outcome. Potentially worth warping and respawning to, pretty looking, far away from any other checkpoints. Alright, you're all set. You three have earned a lollipop, so enjoy. See you next week. Number 159, the Ravine Veiled Village Grace. It's what the Ravine Grace wishes it was in terms of usefulness, as you're likely to die or maybe go somewhere else before continuing on your journey to Altus. Also, the names are really stretching the definition of a village. Does this one half-finished broken wooden shack count as a whole village? What village? I've reached the very top of the precipice and yet I still can't see any village. This is false advertising. Number 158, the Ruin-strewn Precipice Grace. Let's see, good distance, potential as a respawn or warping spot. Alright, this one definitely seems useful enough to be ranked a little high. Number 157, the Aqueduct Facing Cliffs Grace. I'm always happy at the sight of a grace with a unique visual style. I mean, what other checkpoint offers a detailed look at a massive upside-down castle without a bastard trying to kill you as soon as they lock eyes with your character? But visuals aren't the only thing it's got going for it, as it's a pretty necessary respawn point when fighting not one but two different Crucible Knights whilst making your way to the Gargoyle Duo boss, though you can't just do this to both of them, I guess. Still serves an important purpose regardless. Number 156, the Cathedral of Dragon Communion Grace. Every time I rank a grace you're likely to warp back to on several occasions, I think to myself there's no way another grace could come in and have more people returning to it than this, only to be proven wrong every time. The two Dragon Communion churches are like a pair of brothers that understand each other very well whilst working on a similar field despite being in entirely different countries, with both giving their respective graces an unparalleled level of usefulness. I can't help but continue complimenting them because their use is just as simple as functioning as a warping place once you have enough dragon hearts to gain a new overpowered dragon spell, instantly making you 20% cooler and more attractive just by having it equipped. Just like the amazing view you get from both, and even if that wasn't the case, you're still in a giant dragon cathedral with a massive fucking ancient dragon resting at its center, which automatically makes it more than sick no matter what. Number 155, the Fort Faroth Grace. 3 words: Dragon, Sourceal, Tectus Half. That's all you need to know. Important for both respawning to and warping at with a lot of distance, nice and straight to the point with no hidden features whatsoever, just as Miyazaki intended. Number 154, the Lake-Facing Cliffs Grace. Good for either path you chose to reach Liurnia, with some warping potential in case you felt like doing Hyera's quest, but due to its insignificant distance between other graces, it's not as amazing as you'd imagine. Oh, who am I kidding? That view alone is more than enough to rank it miles above everything else on the list. Are you kidding me? And I'm not even being biased when saying that, given that it introduces you to what the region has in store and its important key locations right off the bat, which is especially useful in an area where most people easily get lost. Number 153 is the Siopra River Bank Grace. I occasionally make a short, uninspired entry every now and again due to laziness and my need to see this list get shorter lest I lose my mind, but for this one I decided to refrain because first of all, holy shit, that view! And second of all, it's pretty important given how far away it is from other graces, automatically making it good for respawning or warping to. Especially because you'll probably miss a few of the stone structures you have to light up to fight the Ancestor Spirit boss, or die because of these living fucking sentient balls of pure electricity sending jolts of terror and despair directly into your soul and torrent. What I'm saying is to be nicer to this Grace. Give it a firm handshake and say you're proud of it or something, because it's probably saved your ass more times than you can count. Number 152 and 51, the Ballarat Tower Settlement and Small Private Altar Graces. They're the same as any other side of Grace somewhere within the middle of a legacy dungeon. I'm sorry, there's just nothing unique or original for me to say here. Just marvel at the beauty of them, use them for warping at or respawning to, especially because of this Hornsent Sellsword who's killed more people than most mini-bosses, and watch as I proceed to the next entry because that's all that could be said here. Number 150 and 149, the Midra's Library and Man's Hall Grace. It seems that every single legacy dungeon in these games has at least one of the following. A grace used for boss respawning, automatically making it the golden child of the family, followed by another one right after said grace that's used so people rest at it once and then never see it again, meaning it's terrible. And then one or two that exist somewhere in between being useful for warping, respawning, and whatever else, with every one of them looking about the same in terms of their beauty. Guess which description fits these two the most? I bet you'll never know. Number 148, the Ancestral Woods Grace. It's neat looking and useful for warping at and respawning to if you either wanted to explore the Night's Sacred Ground or the Spiritual Woods and light up the stone tablets for the second malnourished deer boss. What, you expecting more from me? I don't feel like doing any more than this, that's all you need to know. Number 147, the Castle Soul Main Gate Grace. It's another one of those sites with a walking mausoleum next to them, meaning you'll be hearing nothing except the sweet soothing sounds of... So most likely you'll warp and respawn here a couple times more than your average Grace, especially since it's the only one that introduces you to Castle Soul while keeping a lot of distance between itself and other checkpoints, giving it plenty of use despite not looking very awe-inspiring on most days. Number 146 to 142, the Mount Gelmir Graces. Yara yara yara, they look nice and you know the fundamental math rule by now. Good distance equals likeliness to be respawned at plus warp to, resulting in all of them being useful in a pretty uniform way with no special or unique factor to talk about so that they're separate from each other. Now copy what's on the board and let's get this class over with because I'm slowly approaching a mental breakdown here. Number 141 to 137, the rest of the Halig Tree Graces. They're all basically the same as previously ranked Graces in terms of use, except way better in every regard. And I mean every regard. These are some exceptional specimens of equal quality, use, and sheer goddamn beauty. Some may be more important for warping to or respawning at than others, but they're all unique in their own way, thus ending up together as one big happy family. You son of a fucking bitch. Even though they're quite far away from one another, but you get the picture. Number 136, the Divine Tower of Caelid Center Grace. This is the pinnacle and epitome of what a Grace should be. Unlike every other member of the Divine Tower family, this site does not give a fuck and gives you your money's worth. Without its existence, the world will crumble into nothingness as we know it, and thousands will review bomb the game for subjecting them to dying from gravity or a random soldier over and over without a quick way to go back and reach the basement, resulting in everyone ignoring said basement and just acquiring the rune and saying fuck you to the rest of the tower. A tier Grace, case closed. Number 135 to 131, the Mountaintop Graces. I've ranked enough region Graces and we've all had enough of saying the exact same shit over and over, so I'm just gonna save myself and you all the time and pile these up together because I'm really starting to get sick of it all. They look nice, they're good for warping at and respawning to with plenty of distance and key points of the map to explore. There, I feel like a depressed substitute teacher on their first week of school right now, it's not pleasant at all. Number 130, the Pillar Path Cross Grace. Most people would say this Grace gets its high ranking from being warped too often for the sake of doing Tiolier's quest or as a respawning ground in case they die on their way to the Alok River or somewhere else on the map, but as objectively correct as they would be, we all know the true reason as to why it's ranked so high on the list. The view you get from here is divine, which is a word I've never used to describe any other view no matter how pretty it was, so you know this is something special. Every time I look at it, my heart aches, for this DLC was robbed of its rightfully deserved Best Art Direction trophy back at the Game Awards and... Okay, that's enough being over dramatic, but the view is still seriously good though. Number 129 to 122, the boss respawning graces. It really shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone seeing these 8 sites being ranked as high as they are. After all, without them, you wouldn't have a nice simple way of respawning to a boss that keeps kicking your ass with each time being harder. They serve next to no other purpose, but sometimes as a checkpoint, you just need that one good purpose to belong and be pretty whilst daring anyone to ask any more from you. Not to mention that sometimes you'd be getting your shit pushed in by a giant fucking tree snake so hard that you may want to cry to Renala and change your build, meaning these graces serve as a sort of helping hand that gets rid of any and all inconveniences. Number 121, the Ravine North Grace. There's very few graces out there that just have this much space all to themselves, like they're some sort of billionaire with too much money to spend across 5 lifetimes. Due to how continentally far away it is from any other checkpoint, you're realistically gonna use this for warping and or respawning, giving it a large sum of utility, especially because it's leading you down a path to Regalia and the Scorpion River Catacombs. And it looks pretty! Number 120, the Outer Wall Phantom Tree Grace. This, without a doubt, is one of the most beautiful and useful graces out there, boasting the special benefit of letting you respawn in case you die to either the Tree Sentinel duo or the Stone Gargoyle a few steps away, whilst being very far away from any other sites and being almost impossible to miss unless you specifically didn't go here, which most likely you will. You know, it's always the better graces that need next to no arguing for to justify their place. Number 119 and 118, the foot of the Jagged Peak and Jagged Peak mountainside graces. You've got it figured out by now. It's the same old, so blah blah blah. They both look visually impressive whilst being very useful due to their distance and the main boss they're leading you to. You know the usual, but this one's ranked a little higher because it's also good for warping to Senesaks in case you ignore them the first time like most people, including me. Notice how I said warping to exclusively. After all, there's a Stake of Marika which functions as your method of respawning, meaning this grace doesn't stray far away from its twin. God, I love Jagged Peak. Number 117, the Great Bridge North Grace. Surprisingly versatile for a grace accompanying a location next to the edge of a cliff, as there's a multitude of paths to choose from here, with the most integral one by far being the lake with a half-rotten, beyond expired dragon waiting to burn your ass with cold fire. Meaning you can use this site to respawn in case you either die to him or the swarm of manflies constantly grabbing you, which, believe it or not, is a somewhat realistic thing to say, since this shitty maggot sorcerer carefully tending to them has the ability to buff and heal them like a channeler from Dark Souls 1 would. Besides that, there's only one other thing this grace excels at, much like its kin, and it's the view! Number 116, the Temple Quarter Grace. This grace, unlike its shy neighbor, sticks out for you to see and use, and considering that it serves as an easy respawn point in case you either die to Smorag whilst looking very pretty, you can see why it's one of the higher ranking Liurnia graces, especially when it's quite far away from any other, though most likely you'll just grab the key and run like the bitch you are. Number 115, the Behind Karya Manor Grace. Let's see, it's viable for respawning purposes due to there being basically no stakes of Marika to be seen with a lot of distance, meaning it could serve as a good warping spot in case you forgot an item. Alright, it's definitely the type of grace to be ranked respectably on the list, but I feel like it doesn't deserve to be this high up, so... I get it now. Number 114, the Freezing Lake Grace. It's almost exactly identical to all other mountaintop graces except with a slightly prettier view and an angry frozen lizard boss waiting for you. Yeah, a real shocker, I know. Number 113, the Forbidden Land Grace. You've heard of graces that conveniently allow you to respawn for bosses, but have you ever heard of one that does so and leads you to an important region? It's no wonder this site has its own entry, especially when it's this visually appealing in a unique way whilst being useful for more than just a knight's cavalry, as these short bastards who just recently subscribed to death itself are likely to backstab you with the force of an alcoholic father with anger issues before you decide to potentially return here once you miss something, no matter how unlikely that is. Number 112, the 3-Path Cross Grace. It's pretty much got all what you'd expect from a great DLC grace. The distance, the warp and respawn potential, the looks. But there's always one thing that these sites specialize in, making them stand out from the rest. That being their questline significance, blessing them with even more reasons as to why you'll eventually return to them one way or another. I'm really sorry. I wish I could say more about it, but that's literally all I've cooked up. The good graces need very little to say in their defense as to why they're ranked where they are, especially when most of you already know why they're this good. After all, you've used them plenty of times before, so I'd just be pouring water on a Moroccan desert by trying. They're that homogeneous. Number 111, the main gate cross, Grace. It's pretty much got all what you'd expect from a great DLC, Grace. The distance, the warp and respawn potential, the looks. But there's always one thing that these sites specialize in, making them stand out from the rest. That being their questline significance, blessing them with even more reasons as to why you'll eventually return to them one way or another. What? Getting a sense of deja vu? This is a completely original, not at all lazily copy-pasted entry. What are you talking about? Number 110, the Rampart side path, Grace. Surprisingly forgettable for a site that's this useful, and I say that because I literally forgot to rank it and had to double check. Luckily, it doesn't need much introduction, so I can keep this entry short and concise. It could obviously lead to multiple points of interest, with the number depending on how you've stumbled upon it, given that this Grace is somewhere in between everything in Altus. But the most obvious and noteworthy purpose that this checkpoint serves is finally being able to track that piece of shit's red lightning asshole and respawn in case she delivers you yet another mouthful of knuckle sandwiches, since Lenciax is still an ancient dragon that came down from the heavens to kick your ass just like Margit once did and tried to do again like an idiot. Go home and retire, old man. Your days of rivaling Radahn are far behind ya. Number 109, the Halig Tree Town, Grace. It's pretty much the exact same as the rest of its family, except for this pretty looking disappointment. But its purpose is just important enough to nudge it slightly higher on the list, because when you're a checkpoint that functions as an easy way to respawn for a tough boss, you're essentially destined to one-up any other Grace in your region, no matter what. Number 108 to 93, the rest of the boss respawning Graces. It would have been easier to just group up almost every boss respawning Grace, but that just didn't sit well with me. These sites house great enemies that are a step above your run-of-the-mill usual, especially when most of them are highly sought-after main bosses, or just really hard regular bosses that keep kicking your ass more often than they have any right to, making these checkpoints slightly higher ranked as a result. Also, you're telling me a shithead with a damage output that's a little too high can dish out enough punishment to match a legendary lightning dragon despite being reused as a regular enemy a few areas later? Number 92, the Church of the Eclipse Great. Hang on. This site's only real purpose is to serve as a respawning ground for Commander Niall. Why is it ranked slightly high? Oh, right. Okay, just hear me out on this one. I know most people don't even know about this banished knight's existence, but if you ran into him, given that you would go two separate paths from this point onwards, you know exactly what this motherfucker can do. No one has ever encountered this 1% legendary enemy and stayed the same, and for good reason. He's a ghost, automatically rendering him immune to every status effect, who has two high damaging great swords that could either deliver frostbite or heal him straight up for free. And did I mention just how much HP he has? Well, I didn't because I don't know myself, but it's a lot, trust me. With all of that in mind, you can start to understand why this Grace might even deserve to be ranked higher than this, especially since you'll likely die to him more than the boss. He is the banished knight of all banished knights, a terror amongst every tarnished, a hidden teleporting threat capable of taking out half the game's boss roster solo. A big part of the very reason why I love Elden Ring and Souls games as a whole, as for some reason devs love to randomly decide to dedicate a shitload of time carefully constructing that one enemy which fucking destroys you in the most efficient way possible. Number 91, the Village of the Albanorix, Grace. Access to various good items? Check. Distance and functionality as a road to a boss? Check. Visual beauty? That one may not be present, but I still like how it looks, and I've already done more than enough to explain its spot on the list. Number 90 is the Castle Front Grace. It basically has every positive that your average DLC Grace possesses, with a few added benefits, mainly serving as some sort of midpoint to explore these three important locations, meaning you're likely to warp to it even more than the usual DLC checkpoints, which already had good warping value. Also, it just looks sexy as fuck. I mean, look at this. Even Mesmer made sure it stuck out by skewering a bunch of freshly spiced horn scent. Artistic beauty at its finest. Number 89, the Mistwood Outskirts Grace. Wonderful for convenient warps and respawns, good for important quest lines, introduces you to the only foggy location in Limgrave, looks insanely gorgeous, can be used to be led into multiple different locations, plus with a ton of distance. Now this is a great specimen. It could have been like its useless uncle and served next to no purpose, but it chose to actively avoid such a fate, and for that I am proud of it. Number 88, the Lena's Rise Grace. The reason why I'm willing to place this one incredibly high on the list is because despite serving only one purpose, it's actually pretty good. Of course, respawning quickly to fight the Knight's Cavalry in case you die to him isn't too much to brag about, but in the case of Grail's Dragon Bearer, which has a steroid-ridden tier scaling, you're most likely gonna die to this boss a few times more, which does actually matter a lot given that this checkpoint is decently far away from any others. So unless you decide to cheese your way to victory, this Grace will always serve a distinct enough purpose to separate it from the rest. And even if you do decide to cheese the Knight's Cavalry, you're still ironically gonna die a lot because it's very risky, so it's still useful regardless. Number 87, the Cliff Road Terminus Grace. I looked at this grace initially thinking it was above average due to it being the only one to exist within a 5 light year radius and having the prospect town as its point of interest, but then I remembered that it led to some great items too. And then I remembered how glorious it looks and that it leads you to the Church of Benediction for some even more incredible equipment and amazing grace. Number 86, the Dragon's Pit Terminus Grace. Holy lobster, macaroni and cheese, how is this sort of level design even achievable? Aside from the incredibly scenic view, capable of making me glaze from software just by looking at it for another minute, it's got a significant amount of distance between both itself and other sites of grace. And you remember what I taught you a little bit ago, right class? What do you mean you fell asleep for the third time and didn't pay attention? Well, you're on your own then, I'm not saying it again. But I will mention that serving as a boss respawning grace isn't as good as you may think, given that the boss is nothing special. I mean, come on people, you're in the DLC. Is a wyvern with anger issues and some flame lightning really gonna pose a threat to you, especially after defeating the legendary ancient dragon man? Still, credit where credit is due, I'm not taking that away from it. After all, how could I when it looks this amazing? My god. Number 85, the Dragon Temple Grace. It's good for warping at and respawning to with a lot of distance, whether you die to the Godskin duo or just another banished knight waiting for his turn to toast your ass with his latest shitty dragon breath spell because you felt like actually exploring this ancient stone structure with a massive tornado and a dragon that have ruined it beyond recognition. Number 84, 83, and 82, the Woodland Trail, Abyssal Woods, and Divided Falls Graces. Every one of these graces are exactly like the consecrated snowfield graces, as in they're very far away with a lot of fog blocking your vision, instantly making them undeniable top-tier apex predators in the sight of Gray's jungle kingdom, as you're going to warp and respawn at them no matter how experienced you are in navigating the lands of shadow, because I swear to god, even if you were to go through this area across 5 new game cycles, you'd still be just as lost trying to find your way while a bunch of these giant-headed shadowy old men with a thirst for world destruction and one too many eyes try to hunt you down like it's Black Friday and you took the last 90% off flat screen TV. Number 81 and 80, the Fog Rift and Scorpion River Catacombs Graces. I was originally just gonna throw these in the pile of the 18 other underground graces until I realized my head wasn't screwed on correctly today, because these graces are home to some of the best catacombs ever. Fun and unique gimmicks that use new enemies, traps, and sadistic tricks to get me to explore and find secrets within secrets that lead to some truly incredible treasure, and eventually find my way to the 2 Death Knights that are both incredibly well made and thought out. That is not a goddamn thing to scoff at when it comes to these dungeons. I wish every underground location was like this. Maybe then they'd be slightly higher up on the list, like this pair, and we haven't even gotten to their older billionaire brother looking down at most other graces in its $1 million mansion. Number 79 to 62, the rest of the underground graces. Fun fact, I was exploring the abandoned cave to see if there was a major enough difference in difficulty between cave, tunnel, and catacombs graces. There wasn't, but that was when I discovered something more important. The abandoned cave didn't have a stake of Marika before the boss, nor did a couple other systems. So yeah, that was when I discovered there were some graces blessed with no stacks of Marika present, automatically making them viable for respawning against somewhat challenging bosses and boosting their ranking on the list by a significant margin, and giving me a headache for visiting each underground system to check which contained stacks of Marika and which didn't. But at least I can now accurately rank these and tell you that some functioned as boss respawning graces but still didn't have their ranking changed due to their bosses being weaker than the Glintstone Staff's item description. Number 61, the Ancient Ruins Base Grace. I am astounded each time I visit this grace. It leads to a ridiculous amount of important key points whilst looking like a living, breathing, interactable masterpiece painted by the world's most talented of artists, and it's practically 10,000 kilometers away from any other grace. I refuse to say any more in defense of this grace's ranking. That's more than good enough. Number 60 to 54, the rest of the Shadowkeep Graces. It's basically a dark, gothic version of Firelink Shrine that leads to a shit ton of important areas and sometimes even entire regions of the DLC. These graces all have the potential as a respawning checkpoint you might occasionally warp to for a multitude of different reasons. One of them being the underestimation of this massive-ass Legacy Dungeons version of Banished Knights incinerating your character more times than you've gone outside, with the added benefit of a significant amount of distance between all of them and a mostly elegant interior to please the eyes. So although there's a slight difference between all of them, with some being more useful than others, these sites of grace remain more or less identical to one another, meaning they'll always stay grouped up on the list for convenience sake. Number 53, the Sage's Cave Grace. Fun fact, an early problem I've encountered whilst ranking the Graces was being so bored I occasionally forgot what the video was even about, thus ranking the Grace's respective area instead of the Grace itself, resulting in me needing to rewrite this entire entry for this site because none of it was relevant. But luckily, I've noticed this problem before it could get out of hand. Alright, the Grace. You know, it's nothing special. All it really does is let you respawn for 2 fucking bosses with no stick of America impeding its viability. And that's on top of its distance from other checkpoints, overall beauty, and potential for respawning at or warping to in case you light to the skeletons or if you've forgotten about the many hidden walls that lead to valuable items here, earning it the prestigious rank of the second best cave site of Grace in the entire game by a landslide. It's almost bullshit how much better it is in comparison to everything else. How do we have stakes like these when there's not a single one to be seen here? What? Number 52, 51, and 50, the Altus, Raya Lucaria, and Celia Crystal Tunnel Graces. These are the 0.1% of all tunnel graces. You'd think serving as a means of respawning to a boss that keeps kicking your ass with a noticeable absence of any America stakes would be good enough for them, but no, they also had to lead to some of the most valuable items in the entire game, thus giving you even more reason to use them and go to their respective location. I honestly struggle to find any more to say about them. I'm just that speechless. Now, before I move on, some of you may be telling me to hold my horses and that the Celia Grace doesn't deserve to be paired with the rest of these, given that you'll most likely access it through the infamous transporter trap chest that blew all our minds since day one. And during that instance, there wouldn't be a need for a Grace since you'll automatically respawn closer to everything than the site itself. But I'm willing to argue that it's actually more useful then, because realistically, someone who just stepped foot in Caelid after playing the game for like 5 minutes isn't gonna stand a chance against the Falling Star Beast or even any Kindred of Frost, resulting in the checkpoint being used so you can warp out and come back later or explore the new region you've just been teleported to. Why am I going out of my way for an Elden Ring Grace made 3 years ago? Number 49, the Southern Aeonia Swamp Bank Grace. This might be the Caelid Grace that leads to a lot of unique locations the most. From here, you can either go to Redmane Castle, the Town of Sorcery, the Swamp of Aeonia, the Dragon Cathedral, or this oversized bird with scoliosis and the power of literal fucking death depending on how you found it, thus netting itself comfortably as both a warp and respawn point, meaning it's just as versatile as it is beautiful with a lot of distance between it and other sites. Now this is a model Grace worthy of some fucking praise. Number 48, the Underground Roadside Grace. There's plenty of Graces with a lot of space to themselves, but that's especially surprising when looking at an entire dungeon with 5 whole sites placed within it. They're either completely on their own or bunched up together, essentially handing this one a high ranking on a silver platter with golden utensils, as you're gonna be both warping to and respawning at it often, especially in an area with so many hazards and annoyances, thus ultimately proving that it's not about the looks, but the inside. Although it still looks ugly as shit and no one can say otherwise, I'm sorry. Number 47, the Prince of Death's Throne Grace. This is one of the highest ranking boss graces in the list, which is quite surprising given its neighboring grace that it's sitting next to and the fact that the place looks shittier than the boss, except it actually looks fucking amazing with that chosen aesthetic. But the big reason as to why this is leagues higher than any of its kin is that it's secretly a great way to respawn when fighting Fortis X, which you'll most likely do considering that Fia's quest intertwines with Rani's quest, which is done by most people, especially when it's quite easy to follow. Hell, even after fighting Fortis X, you're likely to rest or warp to it at least a couple times to get the mending rune for the death ending. So don't ever underestimate this grace. It offers a lot more than what you may initially think if you care about checkpoints in a video game made 3 years ago. Number 46, the Farum Great Bridge Grace. Unlike its younger brother, this grace has a lot more to offer than one simple function, as it possesses the whopping 2 functions. Okay, I was originally thinking it did more than just that, which is why I was hyping it up so much, but now that I think about it, being able to easily refight Grail and farm the Vulgar Militia for some early game runes are all that it has. Oh well, still one of the higher ranked graces, because believe it or not, that's more than what most graces give you, so I'm just gonna drop its pretty ass right here and never look back. Number 45, the Study Hall Entrance Grace. Easily one of the highest tier graces due to its functionality as a respawn point for a particularly annoying area. Only for that single purpose to become twice as good as you once thought when you get the inverted statue, realizing you not only have to warp back to it, but rely on it once again for respawning when the Carian Study Hall shows its even uglier gravity-defying side, with your favorite int-build tryhard giving you another warm welcome, and eventually leading you to the Liurnia Tower with an item necessary for a certain ending. So overall, that's 3 different reasons as to why it exists in total, on top of being surrounded by a gorgeous interior. Not bad. Not bad at all. Number 44 and 43, the first and spiral rise graces. Are they ranked this high due to their exceptional beauty on top of everything else they have? No. No, they're not. You know exactly why they're up here. These three legendary divine beast horned warriors are strong enough to rifle even the castle soul banished knight, freezing its ghostly nuts off in the mountaintops. Half the entire game's bosses don't even come close to their level. They were probably gonna be given health bars, but much like Devonia, all three of them said no. They'd rather kick your ass and give you a literal run for your money, plus a little bit of showmanship, than to have fancy music playing in the background for them, because they don't need it. Why would they when they're this good at efficiently killing you so hard you'd not only respawn at their graces, but eventually just give up and cry somewhere else for the time being? Number 42, the Yellow Annex Tunnel Grace. Hey, remember when I said heroes' graves topple over most graves? Well, none of them even come close to toppling this fucking beauty. This is easily the most charming tunnel mine in the game. Not just due to me really feeling like I'm exploring an abandoned system that's been overtaken by freezing ice, but also because of the little things like the diggers breaking out of the ice that settled on their stone bodies due to how long they've been standing still for. You've got an easy shortcut guarded by a diaper-wearing loser and another slightly different version of a stealth fight, which isn't just fun, but absolutely worth traveling all the way here for. As the spell he grants, ho ho ho, just wait till you see how hard you can bully big enemies once you're out. S tier cave for an S tier grace. Number 41, the Inner Consecrated Snowfield Grace. Because every consecrated snowfield grace is 50 billion light years away from one another, they're naturally a lot more useful, especially when traversing an area where 90% of the time your vision is worse than that of a blind person. Don't ask how that's possible, it just is, okay? Usually I wouldn't consider this one to be anything special due to it essentially being a checkpoint you reach by going in a near straight line, but because of the aforementioned reasons, you're obviously gonna get pretty fucking lost before stumbling upon any other grace. Unlike your average grace that's there for you to see and use, these ones are more like camouflaged soldiers in the frigid lands of buttfuck Antarctica who are actively hiding to avoid you. But then again, it's a damn near essential respawn point, otherwise you would have completely given up on the Knight's Cavalry duo, and despite the lack of vision, people including myself have figured out how to traverse this region on their very first playthrough, so fuck it, fair is fair. Number 40 and 39, the Dragon's Pit and Darklight Catacombs Graces. These are the best underground graces by far, and it's not even close. They both function pretty similarly to every other cave or catacomb grace more or less, but you already know an underground system that eventually leads you to an important location containing a main boss is instantly gonna make its grace at least 5 times more important. So I rest my case and ignore that one of these bosses is not like the other in terms of quality. Number 38, the Dragon Temple Rooftop Grace. Could you imagine the nuclear fallout that would have occurred had this grace not been a thing? People already hate this easy segment in Farum Azula, so they probably would have just uninstalled and thrown their gaming console out of a skyscraper and never looked back without it. But other than being good for respawning, you're likely to return here at least a couple times if you wanted to fully explore what this entire area has to offer, especially this section that's often glossed over by most people desperately trying to get a bunch of hawks off their ass, meaning it's more important to players who feel like doing things they've forgotten about or re-exploring in case they missed anything like taking out the ancient dragon or paying a visit to the aforementioned area. One of the most significant sights in my opinion, especially if you haven't taken out the Crucible Knight that's in one of the most scenic looking places imaginable. Number 37, the Dragon Temple Lift Grace. This grace may be far away with a shitload of good items, but what it truly shines is its unparalleled visual magnificence, and I refuse to rank it any lower than this, even if I was held at gunpoint just for that. Number 36, the Ordina Liturgical Town Grace. Number 35, the Apostate Derelict Grace. Unlike your traditional church grace, this one doesn't get its use from making you rest at it in order to either speak to Melina or upgrade your fancy juice bottle, but rather from its distance and being a great way to respawn in case you die to this giant walking death museum with the power of 1,000 sorceries shoved up its ass. Or this withered away half-rotten tall bird with scoliosis and way too many steroids. And last I checked, that's a lot more useful than what a normal church grace offers, so yeah. Now if only the fog didn't make it look so boring to look at. Number 34, the Nameless Eternal City Grace. I've noticed a trend with almost every Underworld Grace, and it's that they're far better than the Overworld ones due to there being only 30 stretched across every Eternal City or cavern there is, meaning the vast majority of them serve a unique and integral purpose, including this one. You've got the option to take the conveniently placed coffin to go deeper, explore 1/4 of Deep-Root Depths, warp to in case you forgot anything and respawn for Siluria, or just want to look at how nice it is. Okay, that last one was just kinda there because let's just be honest with ourselves here. Almost no grace is worth warping to just look at the area surrounding it exclusively. So just remember the other 4 and forget about the last one. Number 33, the Volcano Manor Grace. Wow, who could have imagined that a grace which has a gorgeous appearance, significant distance, and an importance to multiple quest lines would be ranked so high? Gotta be the top 5 biggest plot twists in any form of media, that's for damn sure. This site does everything. I mean, the list just goes on and on. After all, it's also good for respawning in case you die to the furious Italian who's ready to cut up anyone saying they like pineapple on pizza with a comically large wheel cutter. Or warping to, which is absolutely necessary given you need to in order to progress everything properly and get all the juicy rewards from every NPC. Additionally leads to multiple locations very likely to stumble upon. Not bad. Now that's a sight of grace and a half if I've ever seen one. But unfortunately not quite first place as you can clearly tell. Also, I totally agree with Felix. It should have been called Magma Manor. Come on, From Software. Number 32, the Prison Town Church Grace. This grace looks at pretty much every other boss grace and actively mocks them whilst showing what a site's full potential is like. It's got literally everything an incredible grace could ever ask for. Easy to spot, important for respawning and warping back to, far enough away from every other grace you'd think it was practically avoiding them, is stunningly beautiful. I mean, there's really nothing that this grace is missing. It's going straight into the S tier, no questions asked. Number 31, the Church of Vows Grace. By far the third best church grace in the entire game, which is fitting. You've got an easy warping spot directly leading you to a location where you can unpiss off an NPC you accidentally swung your sword at, resulting in them wanting you and your entire family dead, with said spots functioning as a respawn point in case you die to the 10th bell-bearing hunter that really hates seeing NPCs happy for some reason. But the best thing this church offers is my dog Muriel, who unlike a certain uneducated scribe, understands the relationship between faith and intelligence and thus won't question or abandon you for giving him books capable of literally killing a god. A high quality grace for a higher quality church that doesn't require further running to justify its location on the list regardless of how you discovered it. Number 30 to 27, the rest of the Shack Graces. Could you imagine an alternate universe where these graces stayed in their original spot on the list because I forgot about them also functioning as boss respawning sites on top of everything else they do? They're obviously very good to return to when your rune wallet isn't so empty, but then become exceptional once you realize that each one of them house a bell-bearing hunter at night, resulting in something that should have been convenient and relaxing instead becoming a fight for your fucking life, especially for this variant in Grail's Dragon Barrow for obvious reasons. But by far the best one is still the War Master's Shack, as it's also the fastest method of returning to another night boss you might struggle with. Just thought you might want to keep that in mind. But Breadley, doesn't the East Raya Locaria Gate Grace cover the niche of the Bellum Church Grace already? Well, because of the two different ways you can reach the Bellum Highway, you're either finding this one or the other first, meaning they're both technically good for respawning against the same boss. Can't forget about that. Number 26, the Cathedral of Manus Meter Grace. I don't feel like writing a whole paragraph as to why this grace is where it's at, and luckily I don't have to. There's not a single person who's played the DLC without running into this cathedral, period. Elegant interior, questline importance, which eventually leads you to fighting two bosses and one edgelord, functions as a warping point since you'll return here a lot, either for set quests or spells or to duplicate a remembrance. You can do a lot with it, thus earning a pat on the back and a kiss on the cheek from me and a high ranking on the list. Number 25, the Fort Height West Grace. As we go lower into the list, we start to see less graces with one or two functions and more ones that result in the game being 10 times worse with them no longer existing. Just look at this. The ability to warp back and progress Kenneth's quest and respawn in case you die while on your way to the very short yet deadly fort with a lot of farmable blood roses to craft with, plus a bunch of other important unmissable items and luxury of being 60 Miyazakis away from any other grace? Jeez, no need to be this good. At this point, just take the spot and leave, why don't you? Number 24 to 21, the rest of the raw ancient ruins graces. They've got the distance, they've got the utility, and they've got the warping potential as well, since there's a shitload of secrets both lore and gameplay wise in this specific DLC region. But most importantly, they have one of the most heavenly views you can ever get in any video game or piece of media for that matter. God damn it, I'm gushing again. We need to hurry this shit up or else I'm gonna stay here forever. I can't believe there were some actual human beings on Reddit who thought this area was mid when it's got two great bosses despite one being a slightly different version of the dancing divine beast, whilst holding a lot of content people tend to miss or forget about. Number 20, the Church of Allah Grace. You've seen all kinds of church and shack sites, but have you ever seen a church that functions like a shack? Well, I mean, you probably have, given that this is the very first church and nomadic merchant you stumble upon, which makes them even more special. You've got an easy way to upgrade your weapon to a certain level before accessing the round table hold, some good distance from other checkpoints whilst functioning as a good warping spot for Rani's quest, and a means of respawning for the 3 Sentinel boss since you can get to him slightly faster from here, which matters a lot for one of the first tough bosses you encounter, meaning you'll leave and return here once you're stronger to actually stand a chance against them. And what better way to do that than to warp here, especially with all Santa Kale offering you an important gesture alongside various goods and a scenic view of Limgrave. And yet this grace falls just shy of first place due to other sites being just that good, and one complaint I have. Who the fuck is Ella? Is that the name of Mikola poorly spelled? There seems to be a lot of sleep mist here occasionally, so one would assume so, but most likely it's just the name of a demi-human queen or something. After all, it fits perfectly with other names like Margot and Marigot. What's next? Is there gonna be a demi-human queen in Nightreign called Malakit or some shit? Number 19 and 18, the Lake of Rot, Shoreside, and Grand Cloister Graces. The highest compliment I could ever give these two to sum up just how essential they are is life would be hell without them, and this area was already hell itself. Number 17, the Noxtella Eternal City Grace. My god. Sorry, I got distracted with the beauty of the surrounding area this grace is in. But I can't help myself because even gameplay-wise, this site is exceptional. Either leading you to the fort with good items or the outside field with good items and a pathway leading to the next area. With both having some brutal enemies likely to take you out at least once, which makes this site invaluable. Also, I am still genuinely bewildered and baffled at there being a checkpoint in the game with this much space all to itself. It's not even the 1% of sites anymore, it's the 0.01%. It's got more real estate than literally any other grace I could currently think of. Number 16, the Castle Morn Rampart Grace. This site is like a gas station stop. You rest at it and remain there for a bit before continuing on your path to Castle Morn, which is what I would have said had it not been this fucking amazing to return and respawn at. Not only are there 2 night bosses, but also a nomadic merchant just chilling next to a fire watching the nice view and waiting for you to give him all your runes, meaning there's no way I could ever rank it any lower than this. Now these are the strategically placed checkpoints I like in my open world Souls game. Number 15, the Morth Ruins Grace. If a grace functioning as a boss respawning ground was the least of its strengths, you already know it's making it to the top, no questions asked. It leads to a lot of locations, including the Bonny Village, alongside the lower section of Shadow Altus, one of the ruined forges, and the Fort of Reprimand, on top of looking prettier than a blooming flower during spring season. And considering that it practically owns this entire section of the DLC's map, giving it a monopoly and a ridiculous amount of distance, you are going to return here one way or the other numerous times without even thinking about it. I mean, how could you not when it's even got questline importance, for God's sake? It is a titanically integral grace with enough utility to feed an entire family of starving graces desperately looking for a reason to exist besides looking nice back in the 400s. Number 14, the Bestial Sanctum Grace. This grace is great. I mean, exceptionally great. You will never find another grace with this level of diversity when it comes to its use. Amazing for respawning purposes, given that most likely you'll be fighting both the Black Blade Kindred and the Beast Clergyman at some point, while serving an even bigger purpose for warping to, given that you'll be going all around the world just to feed a depressed dog some literal death. Not to mention just how far away it is from any other grace. And you know what? Despite there being a constant foggy sky and rain, Grail's Wrecked Barrow still has enough charm for me to consider it a gorgeous location, just in a unique way. And to top it all off, you can use this site to get the Cincadia and Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman without suffering from a mental breakdown. Easily one of the best checkpoints, not just in Elden Ring, but in gaming history. Number 13, the gravesite plane grace. Do I even need to explain this one? FromSoft never ceases to make absolutely unforgettable introductory experiences. Imagine finally being able to access the Lands of Shadow and make your way through the location the game spawns you in before simultaneously having your eyes, ears, and brain blessed by this impossible to argue with scene of magnificence. It's got it all. The distance, the potential for warping and respawning at, the prestige of being the very first grace you touch during your new adventure, yet tragically it's not quite as good as a lot of other graces are. Not due to some fault on its behalf, but just because of the sheer usefulness of other sites of grace that also possess all the aforementioned positives of this one. But that doesn't matter, as this grace is perfectly content serving as your first steps in an entirely new world, and that alone is worthy of anyone's respect. Number 12 is the first step grace. Finally, we're here back where it all started. The true first grace every single player discovers, rests at, warps to, and admires, and with a single scenic view as obscenely packed as this, it's no wonder why it's located at the top of the list, standing tall and proud above every other side of grace. After all, on top of the aforementioned positives, it consistently remains as the very first checkpoint to properly introduce you to Elden Ring's open world, which sets the precedent for things to come. The deaths you'll have, the friends you'll make and lose, the emotions you'll go through, the regions and areas you'll explore, all compiled onto this one site with the clearest view of the mountaintops, Divine Limgrave Tower, Stormvale Castle, and most importantly, the Earth Tree. It is the first of many major surprises you're hit with by this game, with each one constantly resulting in one singular thought forming in your head. This game's a masterpiece. And yet it's still not at the very peak of the list. Not because of the ugly blood addict constantly calling you maidenless even during his dying breath, but because of the upcoming graces, since they're just that great. Number 11, the Debate Parlor Grace. This is a site that actively looks at every other boss grace and calls them pathetic before asserting its sheer dominance and functioning as the closest respawn point to both the upcoming area and the Renola fight, giving you plenty of reason to rest at it whilst taking a gander at its juicy interior for a moment, which makes you wonder why furniture in these games is either completely indestructible or fragile enough for a passing gust of wind to knock it all down with no in between. Number 10 and 9, the Queen's Bedchamber and Elden Throne graces. It's very obvious why these two are like inseparable twins. Apart from their beauty and how close they are to one another, they're both useful before and after Leyndell turns into a burning pile of sand. One allows you to warp and respawn easily for the Morgoth and Godfrey fight, while the other lets you respawn for the final boss and rest at it, which is completely necessary. I am not even joking, you literally can't conventionally get the rolled medallion for the mountaintops or even warp out unless you rest at this grace holding you hostage so that you're forced to speak to more women in your life. Wonderful usage for both overall. Number 8, the Haligtree Roots Grace. Could you imagine if all these sites were secretly sentient and could hear all the things the player says within the vicinity of them? If so, then this grace must have heard an inquantifiable amount of complaints, crash outs, swear words, threats, and God knows what else, which is a really funny thought to me.
Now what? I don't say that.
I dodged in my mind mentally, but I'm actually, in actuality, I'm fucking bad. In actuality, I'm just fucking terrible. Holy fucking dude. I didn't even fucking touch her. I just don't have enough healings for the next fight. I don't have enough healing for the next fight. I don't have anything for the fucking next fight. But for what? But for what? But for fucking what?
Of course, a boss respawning grace is always nice and handy to have, but when talking about Malenia, you know, the Malenia, it becomes a step above mere convenience and more of a complete mandatory necessity to have, or else the entire universe, gone, deleted forever. I don't even need to justify why this one's here or talk about anything else about it. In fact, I should be actively explaining myself for why it's not the highest ranked grace or even the highest ranked boss respawning grace. That's right, you heard me correctly. Although Malenia is the hardest base game main boss Elden Ring has to offer, her toughest moves are very easy to counter. People have figured out enough methods to deal with Waterfowl Dance that I'm confident you can completely stop it by coughing in her face at the right time. You can simply exploit how easily she gets stunned and staggered and even stun lock her on certain occasions, and if you fight her for a bit, you'll eventually master every move she has and read her like a book, which is a lot harder to do with the next boss you can respawn to via the higher ranked upcoming grace. Number 7 and 6, the Charo's Hidden Grave and Cerulean Coast Graces. I am pleasantly astounded by just how useful these sites actually are. Of course, they're well known for introducing you to this region of the DLC whilst looking mind-numbingly gorgeous, but that's only the half of it, as they both serve as a means to conveniently respawn next to their respective Ghost Flame field bosses whilst being very far away from any other checkpoints, meaning you're likely to return to them at some point. Plus, the Cerulean Coast Grace gets the added benefit of being extra useful if you haven't accessed this location yet, hence its slightly higher ranking on the list. Now excuse me for a moment because my eyes need a hefty dosage of visual candy due to the horrors they've witnessed. Number 5, the Beside the Great Bridge Grace. I don't even think there is a single other grace which leads you to 2 main bosses which would have been unbelievably annoying to reach otherwise. And they were already annoying enough to reach to begin with. How the fuck did we get over a dozen unnecessary stakes of America, yet we can't have one for this 50 gazillion-year-old grandpa made of stone? Did the developers suddenly think anyone playing would become godlike and obliterate an endgame boss in Farum Azula? Either way, it makes this site twice as good as your average boss respawning checkpoint, so good for it, I guess. Number 4, the Raya Lucaria Grand Library Grace. It's hard to best a grace that's this ridiculously essential in anyone's playthrough. Respecing and allocating your stats to fit a different build you wish to go for with just one item is an invaluable luxury to have, and with a site that's literally one Miyazaki away from a divorced lady who's sexually attracted to eggs capable of doing just that, of course it's gonna be on the peak of the list, especially when it's a whopping 50 Miyazakis away from any other checkpoints. Number 3, the Palace Approach Ledge Road Grace. I am almost amazed this one isn't number 1. This is the grace. That's it, just the grace. No matter how you enter Mogwin Palace, you are going to rest and return to it over and over an ungodly amount of times, which fits your grossly biblically accurate grade for runes because you can never just have enough of them to level up. No, you always want more and more Albinorics to die for your own personal gain, don't you? I mean, I'm not judging since I do the exact same thing, so you know. This site even gets the added benefit of being okay for farmers without the Sacred Relic Sword yet, and looking great despite being atop a steaming pile of blood, piss, and gore. No other farming grace comes even close to this one in terms of money making. It's not even worth mentioning its distance and how good it is for respawning against the horrors beyond it, since those mean dick and all in comparison. Number 2, the Divine Gate Front Staircase Grace. During your very first time playing the DLC, you are going to get extremely familiar with this grace very fast. It is statistically the site of grace with the most amount of people respawning through it by a long shot. Like, it's not even close, which is a surprise to absolutely no one. Additionally, due to a lot of players struggling with Promised Consort Radon, they'll no doubt take a trip to Raya Lucaria or something so that their build doesn't suck, resulting in this site's potential of being warped back to being through the roof and spiraling into a tower tall enough to compete with the one it's at. And the clear divine view you get from here after fighting your way through Leda and her gang of Mikula Sims, much like the name suggests, is the sugary icing on the world's most delicious cake. So why does it still not have the number 1 spot? How could you possibly best a grace that's literally designed for the hardest Souls boss that's also one of the hardest bosses in gaming history? Number 1, the Table of Lost Grace. I mean, can you really say you're surprised? Come on now, we knew this was going to be the best side of grace the moment I started ranking them. As useful and as necessary as most graces are for your adventure throughout the whole game, there are some very exceptional sites where it's downright mandatory to use them at least once, which is the case here. Made even more special given that there's no way of reaching it other than to commit the cardinal sin of touching a woman's hand. This is one hell of a hub area which offers a blacksmith, a spirit tuner, a finger reader, a training dummy, a group of maiden husks, and a whole bunch of NPCs with important quest lines necessary for some items or an ending or both. Without this ever-changing grace, you'll be locked out of every single one of these items and quest lines alongside a few other things, and considering that it even holds the record for the grace with the furthest distance from any other alongside the highest likelihood of you warping back to it the most, I simply have no choice but to graciously bestow upon it the rank of number 1 best and most useful site of grace in the entirety of Elden Ring, even if it's not the prettiest and even after the DLC. So I guess you could say this grace is anything but a disgrace. Unlike me who fell from grace after making that joke, but do I care? No!
Graceless, tarnished.
It's done. Glad I could finish this before he beat me to it. That would have been a little embarrassing. Hey, in case if you were wondering what would happen if Despite all my expectations and estimations, this video fails to get anywhere. It would definitely suck. A lot, in fact. A lot more than if it were any other. But I'll simply try again. I am more determined than to give up this easily, and believe me, Breadley's still got many years to go before he lets his foolish ambitions go. I've done things like this in the past and I'm willing to do them again. To achieve my dream. Alright. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. After all, the will of Breadley never breaks.